She's gonna be on the.
Recording in progress.
Good evening. I'll call to order this Fairfield Plan and Zoning Commission meeting for July 8th, 2025. We'll start with our meeting minutes from July 1st, 2025, and then I'm gonna go through and take some things out. We'll start with the minutes from the July 1st. Can I have a motion, please? Oh, let's see, Commissioner Braun's not here yet.
Correct.
Commissioner Harrison's online. Commissioner Randolph is not here, correct?
Not here.
So do we just have Commissioner Delgado? Is there any other, Commissioner Siebert? Commissioner Collins isn't online?
No.
Okay, so Commissioner Delgado and Siebert, you're stepping in for minutes and for, I guess, any other vote that we take until Commissioner Braun, I think she's joining us later, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Peter.
Yeah.
Oh, Peter is online.
Okay, then who is up then?
I think it's probably Peter's turn.
Okay, and then,
Peter and then Joe.
okay, so my apologies, Commissioner Delgado. Commissioner Collins, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Just get a little closer to your microphone, please. And we'll try and increase the volume too. All right, meeting minutes from July 1st. Can I have a motion, please? Commissioner Corsillo,
Move to approve.
Commissioner Siebert, second. Okay. Commissioner Corsillo,
It looked good to me. Nothing else.
Commissioner Siebert,
Nothing else.
nothing else. Other comments or questions? We put this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hands.
Aye.
I abstain.
Harrison abstains too.
Harrison abstains. Okay, so 5, with Commissioner Harrison and Ford abstaining.
Thank you.
All right, so let me just take a few things out of order, because I understand, we'll maybe here on items that may be tabled or, withdrawn. Going still in section B, 250 Pequot Avenue per section 25.7.10, discussion of potential off-site below market rate units in lieu of on-site BMRs for an approved 18-unit residential project. I understand that's been withdrawn for now,
Correct.
so we will note that for the record, it's been withdrawn. The next item is gonna be 3B and C, 108, excuse me, 3A, B, and C, 108 fire, which I'm recused on, so Commissioner Corsillo, if you don't mind taking that one.
Yes, so we have Commissioner Randolph is not here with us this evening. Chair Noonan and Commissioner Ford are recused from this item. And we have a lot to go through, so Commissioner Braun is not here either at the moment, but I've talked to her about this also. We are going to table this item for this evening so we can have additional time to review and have the full commission that has been on hand to vote for this item. So I will ask for a motion to this item, to these 3 items. Table. We got a second.
Harrison.
Commissioner Harrison, thank you. Any further comments?
No.
Commissioner Harrison?
No.
Okay, can we vote on this item? All those in favor of the motion to table these 3 items, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
You, motion passes unanimously. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. If anybody's here for 108 fire, we wanted to put that out there, so you guys weren't waiting. The next item I'm gonna call out of order is in our public hearing, item, section C, items 5 through 7, zoning regulation amendment, application of Pekarsky Investments, establish a Reef Road housing zone, and then 812 and 820 Reef Road and 155 Forest Avenue and 810, 812. 6 is application to establish a Reef Road housing zone on land presently zoned residential B. And item 7, zoning compliance and coastal site plan application. I would call this because I understand from the applicant, we are going to be tabling it again for July 22nd.
That's correct. The applicant submitted a letter requesting a continuance.
If he's not ready yet with, this is something that we'll need to hear from the applicant for presentation purposes. So with that, unless there's any questions, I would ask for a motion to table to July 22nd, these items. Commissioner Corsillo,
Move the table.
for seconds, Commissioner Levy seconds. Commissioner Corsillo,
Nothing further.
Levy,
Nothing further.
any other comments or questions from the commission?
I
Commissioner
have one
Harrison?
question. Yeah, if you don't mind, maybe Director Harrigan, when is the deadline to vote on this? I assume that we're within our statutory timeframe, but I was just curious.
The deadline to complete the public hearing needs to be completed by August 5th. So we have time in which to conduct the public hearing. And then the decision is not until if that timing is in place, I believe the decision then gets kicked out until I believe the end of, I think this is not correct. I think it's actually the end of October.
Do you think there's an offline meeting?
Anything else, Commissioner Harrison? She froze. I think she froze there. Okay, you're back.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm all set. Thank you. Sorry.
No worries. Questions? Commissioner Collins and Siebert are still sitting in on this.
Yes.
All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
For Commissioner Collins, so it passes unanimously. So again, for 812 and 820 Reef Road, we'll be hearing this July 22nd, 2 weeks from today.
When will we hear Biro Street? Next Tuesday? You didn't say.
Yes, anything continue, at least for that instance, that will be continued to next week, right? Just to confirm that. Flower Street. Will be on, let me rephrase, it'll be on our agenda for next week for consideration. If at that time the commission is ready, they can vote on it. If they want to ask more time for whatever reason, they will say so, but it will be on next week's hearing agenda. I'll put that line on you guys. Okay, I think that's all kind of the quick ones to make sure the public is up to speed. Anything else I'm missing? Or can I check going back to the original?
Should we go back to the
Yeah, I
original?
think I got everything too.
Yes.
Okay. So back to our administrative session, B, Homeland Street, 824 review. Right of way merge with the property at 4343 Homeland Street. Ms. Harrigan.
This application for an 8-24 came to us from the town engineering department. The property owner at 53 Toilsome Hill Lane has requested discontinuance of the right-of-way at the end of Homeland Street and for that property to be merged with his contiguous property located at 343 Homeland Street. The request was reviewed by other town departments and the conservation and TPZ department staff both agreed that a restriction be added that the revised lot cannot be used as a future building lot as the Rooster River is in close proximity to the property. The applicant had received prior permission from the engineering department to construct a driveway that led to the back of their property on Toilsome Hill Lane. By discontinuing this area, not much changes except for that the Department of Public Works no longer has an obligation or responsibility to maintain any trees or features within that roadway extension. So that's all I have on this. Per 8-24, what the engineering department would be looking for and at the advice of town council is a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen, should you want to recommend approval of the discontinuance.
So positive recommendation for the line item or negative recommendation. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay. Have a motion, Commissioner Levy?
I move for a positive recommendation for the discontinuance of the right of way with a condition that the merged lot not be not permit any additional building.
Thank you. Is there a second? Commissioner Corsillo seconds. Commissioner Levy?
Straightforward, town agencies in favor of it. It's basically contiguous to the property at 53 Toilsome Hill, and it'll relieve the town of the obligation to maintain the portion that's being basically given to the, or transferred, it gives us the, relieves us the obligation to maintain the right of way on 3 Toilsome.
Commissioner Corsillo?
Agree with Commissioner Levy. Nothing further.
Commissioner Ford?
That's a question. Do we hear from any of the neighbors regarding this? Would we have heard from them and signed?
No.
They've been noticed of this though, I assume, right?
Well, it was part of the agenda. There's no official notification requirement.
There's no requirement to reach out to them.
No.
So I know I mean, I live a block from there, so know that they've done a lot of work to that property. I know they put in a pool and just being in the neighborhood last year, and some of the folks were a little surprised that they were looking to put a driveway in. I'm surprised we haven't heard from anybody, but not heard from anyone. That's kind of indicative of consent.
No building's gonna go there.
No, and it's not gonna change. Just a couple extra cars go down there. That end street anyway, so. Or dead ends there, I should say.
Other comments or questions from the commission? Fairly straightforward, I think. Can we put it to a vote? All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Next item is 1173 North Benson Road, Fairfield University. Request by Fairfield University for 100% release of a bond, $187,220 as recommended by Town Engineering Department for improvements required as part of the construction of Faber Hall. Ms. Harrigan?
I don't have really that much else to add. Anthony Santiago from the town's engineering department did an inspection back in 2024. And it just got lost in the shuffle in terms of getting it in front of the commission for the release of that bond, but he reconfirmed that he was fine with the 100% release.
Have a motion? Commissioner Corsillo,
Move to approve.
second. Commissioner Levy, seconds. Commissioner Corsillo,
Staff recommends approval, says the work has been completed, so.
Commissioner Levy.
Yeah, I've ridden my bike by, and that building's been up and used for quite some
Yeah.
time.
Other comments or questions? Again, pretty straightforward. Can we put this to a vote?
I have a question, if you don't mind.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, apologies. I don't recall this, but were there conditions of approval with Faber Hall? I don't remember. I don't have the notes in front of me.
Trees?
There was lots of, they've done an unbelievable job. I'm sorry.
No, yeah, I remember we had a discussion on the trees,
Can't
inputting.
screen that building anymore than.
I haven't been there, so I can't attest to that. I was just curious if they had met their conditions. Is that right, Ms. Harrigan?
Well, yes, it has been inspected by our zoning enforcement officer, and they have a CO for the building. So at that time, the landscaping that was required to be installed was installed. The bond release actually pertains to usually the drainage infrastructure, whether there's any kind of infrastructure that's otherwise required within the public right of way. Sometimes that also covers street trees if they're mandated for a project. So the town engineering staff will look to ensure that those items that they require to be bonded have been installed correctly and maintained.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Other comments or questions? Put this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand. Aye.
Aye.
So again, passes unanimously. So I'll call the next two items together. Any reason not, oh, they're probably the same, they are the same. So recommendation to public hearing, zoning regulation amendment, application of 730 Thomas Drive LLC to amend 14.4 transit oriented development park overlay of the zoning regulations to allow public open spaces with public art components to apply to a portion of the non-residential component for mixed-use projects. And 730 Commerce Drive, special permit application of 730 Commerce Drive LLC for a mixed-use project consisting of 90 residential units, ground floor, commercial, 118 parking spaces and a public plaza with a public art components. Anything about these items? I assume public hearing is required.
Public hearing is required for this. I think this will be, an interesting application for the commission. It's, I think in the Commerce Drive area, this will be the third project by, the development team that did trademark one, Alto. And, this is the site where Rio Bravo is located. So, they are, hoping, I think, to add a public amenity as part of the commercial square footage for this. So, they've been working with the Arts Commission. They've also been making they've also been in front of the local traffic authority for some public right-of-way improvements as well. So hopefully you'll be excited to see this project when it makes it to the calendar. But that's pretty much all I have to add at this point.
Maybe a little change of pace. That'd be nice. Commissioner Levy?
Yeah, just one question. Didn't we at some point approve an 830G right on that corner
No.
where Rio Bravo was?
No.
No?
No, that's closer to the entrance.
It's, the original 830G application was the project that was most recently approved by the commission that went from, I think, 24 units to 18 units, right where.
Surrounding where that overlaid part, Estuary Road is, and then where the entrance is to get to the southbound side. That's how that little like island of sorts.
This is across the street from that. So this is across the street from Alto.
On the northern side?
It is. It's next door to the childcare facility, and then next door to that is the orthopedic office. So it's on that side of the street.
Thanks.
Can I have a motion for these two items? Commissioner Priscilla,
Move to recommend to public hearing.
thank you. Seconds. Commissioner Levy. Any further
Nothing further?
comments or questions to the commission? We put this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. We tabled 3A for old business. We have no old business, so going on to compliance. 132 Old Post Road, compliance application of William Pitt Sotheby's for a proposed non-illuminated wall sign facing Old Post Road. Sargan.
John, do you mind just pulling that up real quick for the commission? So when there's a new wall sign that hasn't previously been approved by the commission in conjunction with a building, it historically has come before the commission for a compliance review. This is a very simple request for a wall sign. It's just essentially a wood wall sign affixed to the brick elevation of the building. And it's not intended to be illuminated either by exterior or interior light source. So it's really just a sign that has not, this particular building has not had a facade sign before, which is why it's before you. So I think it's really just the task of the commission to determine whether they like the sign type in conjunction with the building. Otherwise, it meets our requirements for size, placement, and other, standards. So it's just whether you like the look of it on the building.
All right, let's get a motion on, and then we can discuss. Commissioner Levy,
Approved.
is there a second? Commissioner Corsillo, Commissioner Levy,
It's fine to me.
Commissioner Corsillo.
Legal term of art.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. No worries. Can Any other comments or questions? We'll make sure
Do we
it's
need
left.
to put a condition on that?
Yeah, no, I think. I assume they'll put it up level. I can't imagine William Pitt's gonna have a non-level sign on their bill.
Are they actually putting it over the flag?
No, I see that. Caught my attention too. I assume that's, the,
AI.
AI, it could be AI, yeah.
I'm kidding.
I assume Photoshop, not perfectly done. It's okay.
Looks fine to me.
I like the font.
Receiver?
My apologies.
No, yeah, that's fair. Any other comments or questions? I mean, looks fine to me as well, so we put this to a vote. All those in favor, please say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Okay. So we are now on to our public hearings. You've been calling these 1 and 2 together, haven't you?
I
assume?
have been.
Yeah, so I'll call zoning regulation amendment, application of 1477 Congress Street LLC to establish a new section 5.4 Congress Street Affordable Housing District, pursuant to section 830G of the Connecticut General Statutes. And 1477 Congress Street zone change application of 1477 Congress Street LLC to establish a Congress Street Affordable Housing District on land presently zoned AAA. All right, so Attorney Bellis is on his way up. Commissioner Corsillo, where are we with this? Because I've been recusing myself in 108. It's kind of been compared with this, so I'm just missing the other ones and I haven't got up to speed yet.
Yeah, so Attorney Bellis, you had traffic that needed to be, you had submitted that already.
No, I
So I think
conclude, I concluded and you were waiting for the,
initial presentation, we were just about to open to,
Okay, so you're in public comment. Got it.
we're on public comment.
No, thank you. That's what I needed to hear.
and I think it's.
Think Joel's up.
Was going to start.
Okay.
Yeah.
Attorney Green? Once Attorney Green goes, and I'll open it up to people in person and then remotely and by phone. If you're joining us remotely and wish to be heard on these applications regarding 1577 Congress Street, you can please sign up in the chat or raise your hand so we can start a queue.
And if you do not, you will not be unmuted.
Yes, that's our new feature for security purposes. We will not be able to hear you unless you identify yourself, raising your hand remotely, obviously, or signing up in the chat. Thank you for that. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, staff, the public. My name is Joel Green. I practice law in Bridgeport with the law offices of Green and Gross. It's my pleasure to appear before you this evening on behalf of the Merritt Parkway Conservancy and the Greenfield Hill Village Improvement Society. As you're aware, from time to time, I've appeared before you on behalf of both of those organizations, but for the record, the Merritt Parkway Conservancy is a nonprofit organization dedicated to preserving and enhancing the Merritt Parkway, works to protect the parkway's scenic, cultural, environmental assets through education, advocacy, and partnerships. And the Conservancy collaborates with various stakeholders, including the Connecticut Department of Transportation, to address issues like landscape restoration, bridge preservation, and invasive species management. And largely, once again, to preserve the historic character of the parkway. Greenfield Hill Village Improvement Society was organized for the purposes of to make effective the interests and efforts of residents and property owners in Greenfield Hill, and for the benefit of that area of town and for the town of Fairfield in general. And to study, recommend, support, undertake, and participate in public or private projects or activities for the benefit and improvement of Greenfield Hill and the town, and to oppose projects that are deemed to be prejudicial to those interests. So we appear before the commission this evening in strong opposition to this application. And understandably, and as the applicant has made clear, and this is, I think, a little different than we are used to, this presents a proposed text amendment and a proposed map amendment to the regulations. And it's once again intended conceptually, I suppose, as the applicant keeps saying, to permit a 5-story, 39-unit residential development with 49, with up to, I suppose, 49 parking spaces on the property at 1477 Congress Street. And it is filed under the auspices of Section 8-30G. Again, this is kind of a new approach. I note that in the text that is proposed, while there's a sort of a spec section that makes reference to 40 feet or 5 stories, we know that that's zoning speak, and that could effectively be a much higher structure effectively. And as we look at those kinds of developments from both Merritt Parkway Conservancy and Greenfield Hill, we look at these projects in terms of sort of their gross height, mass, and effects, and we don't look at them from a zoning standpoint in terms of the height. In the text amendment, there is reference made to a building that could be 6 or 7 stories. I'm not sure how that's reconciled, but I note that's on the, I don't know, 3rd page of the document. So it's our position that this represents really an unjustifiable intensification of land that is really inappropriate. And there is, as we will demonstrate, critical public interest in preserving historic and natural resources and assuring public health and safety. In addition to sort of those regular things you think about as a commission when you adopt zoning regulations under 8-2 and all those considerations, but sort of the way this is spun as being part of an 8-30G development, we're going to get into sort of those other considerations that the commission may consider when looking at a project or a text amendment related to 8-30G. So we're going to raise the following interrelated concerns. So first and foremost, we want to talk about the irreparable harm to the Merritt Parkway, which is a federally recognized historic resource. And the development lies immediately adjacent to the Merritt Parkway, as you can see from the site plan. And once again, the parkway is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It's been celebrated for its unique integration of natural topography, carefully landscaped buffers, and distinctive architectural features. We kind of take it for granted because we drive upon it all the time. But if you really step back, it's a beautiful asset and a beautiful highway, putting aside lately sort of the traffic and putting that aside. And it's not just a transportation route, but as we'll talk about, it's a scenic and cultural corridor reflecting early 20th century planning ideals. So it is our position that the proposed, and again, tonight we're going to talk about sort of the envelope with this text amendment that's proposed. We're going to talk about the size of the envelope, and we're going to talk about sort of the maximum of what it permits, but that's what the commission really has to think about, is what is the sort of the extent of this thing. So right now, there's this conceptual 5-story, 39-unit structure. And again, they're conceptual site plans, but certainly with its substantial bulk scale and density, it is our position that it would fundamentally and irreversibly alter the historic context of the parkway. Unlike suburban developments that remain sort of visually discrete, the site is topographically low-lying. We're all familiar with the parkway. You come down the hill sort of both ways, whether you're coming from what I call the GE, but the Sacred Heart sort of end of things, or whether you're coming from Westport, you kind of come to that valley to exit 44. And so so that presents a uniquely visible site. And this, as you know, is right by exit 44 on the southbound lane. And so there would be direct line of sight to the proposed building, especially during, 7 months a year, 6 or 7 months a year, when the deciduous trees shed their leaves, late fall, winter, spring. And right at the moment, Obviously, in the summer, there's a better canopy and better buffering, but as we'll describe for you, you can still see the parkway from the site, and likewise significantly for the purposes that we seek to protect, you can see the project from the parkway. It is our position, and again, referring to 8-2, which says that zoning regulations are to be made with reasonable consideration as to the character of the district and to promote the conservation of historic places and areas. And that's a goal of 8-2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to present a few witnesses on this topic before I move on to some others. And I'd like to call Mr. Robert Redmond. And if you can just join me right here. Mr. Redmond, if just for the record, you would state your name and address for the record.
My name is Robert L. Redmond, Senior. I live on 1491 Congress Street, next door in Fairfield. And sorry for the interruption, went down the wrong pipe before.
And so your property is directly next door to
Yes.
1477.
Yes, it is.
And you're familiar with 1477?
Very much so.
And
yeah.
how are you familiar with it?
My family, that 1477 was a farmhouse and my property was a pasture, it was a sheep farm. So my parents bought the property from the 1477 owners in 1962 and built a house there. And I've been there since I was 6 years old, so I'm a little familiar with it.
And have you had many opportunities over the course of your life to be on property at
Yeah,
1477?
both our neighbors and ourselves, we each play in each other's yard. My yard was open, so we played baseball and we over there, they had tire swings. And so, yeah, I spent my whole life in both properties.
And
We had a
even-
big pond in the back, we'd go swimming and fishing and skating, so,
And even in recent years, you've had opportunities to be on the property.
yes, sir.
And can you just tell the commission, is the Merritt Parkway visible from your property to begin with?
Yes, it is, sir.
And is it visible, and can you tell me sort of what that visibility is?
Well, it's, my beautiful wife works in Stanford, so we'll both look out the back window to see what the traffic's like on the parkway before she heads out. So, to give yourself a little more time and I work on the ambulance in Bridgeport, so likewise the other way to see what the traffic is like. So it's pretty clear view. Obviously more so in the winter, but it's pretty real clear view in the summer as well, because that's how we judge, see if we need another 15 minutes or so to get on the road.
So you can see it in the summer, but obviously it's more visible in the late fall, winter,
Yes,
and spring
correct.
months. And in those months, you can clearly see the parkway.
Yeah.
And in terms of 1477, does the same hold true for 1477?
Yeah, you can see the parkway, like I was there this afternoon and you can see the parkway from even with the leaves on the trees.
And from the parkway, you can see can you see the existing house that's on the property?
Yeah, you can see both of them. Yeah. Like before you get off the Black Rock Turnpike exit, you could see both of them. That's why I tell them I forgot to leave lights on or not in my house, because when I got on the parkway, I realized I didn't shut them off.
And both of them, you refer to your house and.
Correct.
At
Yes.
1477. That's all I had. I don't know if the commission has any questions for Mr. Redmond. And, I'm asking him as a witness. Mr. Redmond may want to address the commission as a general member of the public, if that's okay later.
Okay, that's, yeah, I think.
Thank you.
We're gonna be keeping public comment for 3 minutes, so.
Okay, thank you. Next, I would like to call Wes Haynes.
Is he remote?
He is here.
Oh,
okay.
Sorry.
Good evening, Mr. Haynes. Good evening. Could you just state your name and address for the record?
Sure. My name is Wesley Haynes Jr. I'm a resident of 22 Brightside Drive, Stamford, Connecticut.
And can you briefly describe your education? Well, what do you do?
I'm a historic preservation specialist, professional. I have 50 years in the field. I have a Master's of Science in Historic Preservation from the Graduate School of Architecture and Planning at Columbia. I'm Most recently, was employed as the executive director of the Merritt Parkway Conservancy.
And can you just tell me a little bit more about your training and experience over those 50 years?
So my experience has dealt with all sorts of aspects of the built environment, from planning for the appropriate rehabilitation and restoration of properties, identification of new historic properties, and the management of historic properties, particularly in two cases, properties that are owned by state agencies. One is the Merritt Parkway. The other was the New York State Capitol, which I worked with on the rehabilitation and master planning for a number of years.
And how long were you the executive director of the Merritt Parkway Conservancy?
For 6 years, I was executive director.
And can you tell the commission just a little bit about the Merritt Parkway Conservancy and fill in the many blanks I left describing the organization?
So the Conservancy is 25 years old. We were created to basically to partner with, as a private sector partner with Connecticut Department of Transportation on a what turned out to be a 30-year master plan to upgrade the safety of the transportation corridor. Our job was to ensure that the historic character of the parkway was maintained during these upgrades. The parkway during that period of time was widened by 16 feet. It was the gradings, the plantings and vegetation on the sidings were refreshed. New guide rails, the wooden guide rail that is now complete, was put in place. It was all done within standards of historic preservation that allowed for federal funding, as it is a federally listed property, to be part of the 80% formula of rehabilitating the parkway.
And what is the historic significance of the Merritt Parkway?
The historic significance of the parkway is twofold. It was a very advanced transportation infrastructure for its time, but it's also one of the most remarkable integrations of a transportation road, a major transportation highway, into a naturalistic environment. And that's really where the basis of its significance is. It's a naturalistic environment that was intentionally planned. As you travel the parkway, you go through a number of rock cuts at the top of the peaks, but mostly it follows the contours of the existing landscape, which is characteristic of this beautiful landscape we have in Fairfield County that was formed by glaciation. So it's a series of hills, unlike other roads at the time that were pretty much straight line corridors that tried to take out all sorts of curves and change the landscape. The parkway was sort of gently stitched into the adjacent landscape so that it would match that, so it didn't stand out from it. And so the abutting lots, which were largely undeveloped at the time, but this one, the one we're discussing tonight, they were worked into the parkway, and it stimulated the growth of a lot of single-family homes along the corridor, which did work with the parkway because of their scale. They pretty much become invisible behind the parkway.
And at my request, did you study, sorry, are you familiar with the site at 1477 Congress Street?
Yes.
And at my request, did you study the visual impacts of what a potential development under the proposed text amendment would be on the Merritt Parkway?
Yes, I'm very familiar with the site. Part of my job responsibilities was to drive the parkway at least once a month and look for intrusions and problems, dead trees and things like that, but also unwelcome development. So I pretty much drove the parkway at the speed limit, which I was the slowest car on the road most of the time, just looking very, very closely at the shoulders. And I'm very familiar with that site. I also used to drive the parkway in high school from Stanford, and got off at the Black Rock exit. So I'm pretty familiar with the way the contours of the land are quite beautiful at that point, and they drop you down into this valley, the Black Rock Valley, and then rise up again. And the high visibility of this site from from that aspect from coming in both directions.
And you heard Mr. Redmond testify tonight regarding the visibility of the site from the
Yes.
parkway.
Yes.
So the visibility of 1477 from the parkway and vice versa.
Yes.
And is that your testimony as well, that it's highly visible
Yes.
and in particular in the winter months?
Yes, the deciduous tree cover, when it drops its leaves, it opens the site up dramatically.
And once again, that topography that you talk about in the hill, can you just explain how that valley affects the view of the site?
Yeah, so the valley, they're both long drops down into that valley, long open drops with long vistas from the driver's perspective. So you see the bottom of the valley. Unlike many parts of the parkway where it bends and curves, you see these on a regular straight approach for quite a way. I would say a quarter of a mile coming southbound on the parkway and probably a half a mile coming down the hill on the heading northbound.
And did you reach a conclusion as to whether the scale of a potential development of the scale permitted by the proposed text amendment, would there be an impact in any way on the Merrick Parkway?
There would be a major adverse impact. It would be an unwelcome, unnatural form that's introduced onto the parkway that disrupts the historic character of the parkway.
And would that be an irretrievable and irreversible impact on the historic resource?
Yes.
And why is that?
Well, the parkway, as I mentioned before, is all about nature. It's really a lineal park that you drive through. And a large building again, it's only a conceptual sketch in the application. But just based on a building of that size would be a real interruption into that feeling of being in nature.
And if it were a 40-foot building as allowed, or a 30-foot building as permitted in terms of the zoning height and of that size with 39 units, are you able to quantify the likelihood of harm to the historic resource?
For that moment from both directions, over a length of about 3/4 of a mile, there would be 100% harm to the experience of the parkway as an historic resource.
And I think this may be of interest to the commission. Are there modifications that the commission could potentially make to the text amendment that would minimize or eliminate those concerns in your professional opinion?
In my opinion, the current house that's there is an appropriate scale. So the modification would be to bring this proposed application down to the scale of the existing house that's on the site, which blends in with the parkway. So I would say a reduction in height to 1 story and a gross reduction of the footprint of this building would be necessary to bring this into conformance.
I don't have any further questions. I don't think
Let
Commissioner.
me ask this question. Certainly there are residences throughout the Merritt Parkway. We've had discussions about buildings and stuff. I think in the past, when we were talking about the sign most recently on Hartford Healthcare, the buildings are not as, especially from Stratford down to Greenwich, there are not many big buildings.
That's correct.
But there are certainly residences throughout. Help me understand the difference between a 2 or 3 story residence, big, small, whatever, versus this building, the difference in the harm.
Well, the harm is that the basic harm is it'll break the tree line. And whether you have deciduous or coniferous trees there, you would still see it poking up above the tree line. So you can't plant a building of the scale of this building out. I think that for a relatively narrow building on a smaller footprint, it's easier to blend in. It's something you kind of expect. And along the parkway, you can see small buildings behind the trees, and they feel natural there. And that was the scale of the building. The parkway did allow for a couple of barns, a couple of agricultural buildings to be kept near the shoulder. In fact, there's one encroachment in Norwalk, but nothing of the scale of the proposed scale
But it's one, but not one story though. I mean, there are residences that are.
There are two-story residences, but I think a two-story residence could work on that site, but not at the footprint because there'd be just too much of the two-story. It would be too long.
So I was just gonna say that, look, we would prefer for the entire length of the parkway to be fully park-like, but a lot of the uses you've described, admittedly, they exist, but they're as of right. They're as of right in residential zones, and many of those residential zones existed before the parkway was established. And I guess the point is here, you're being asked to create a text amendment that would allow this bulk.
No, it's no doubt it's bigger. I get that. I'm just trying to understand, even if it's just for the record, a building of this size, 3/4 of the size versus like a big residence that's there. You know, it's kind of, like I said, I put the buildings aside because that's a different discussion when we had the commercial. But we have residences going throughout, I think you can see throughout the Merritt Parkway in Fairfield County. So even if it was as of right or predated, so to speak, I mean, you have that potential. I'm trying to understand whether those potential impacts are so different from this current application to render this current application irreparable harm when you have all this other residences throughout.
This application, again, it's only a concept, but it's a very large.
We'll talk about that, don't worry.
It's a very large building that is out of scale with the historic buildings that were on the parkway before, and really the predominant buildings that were grandfathered in before the National Register nomination went into effect.
I guess in your thought, though, it would be if it was more in line with a traditional residential building, whether it's multifamily or not, but it looks more like a single family residence. The more it looks like that, the more in line with what it, more that conforms to what the historic aspect of the Merritt Parkway is.
Yes.
Anything outside of a, you know, even a McMansion would look odd there.
A McMansion would look out there, yes.
That would be another harm to the conservancy, to the historical aspect.
Yeah, if, unless it was a McMansion that was designed with some sensitivity to the
Fair enough.
site.
Commissioner, yeah, go ahead. Harrison, then Marcelo, yeah.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Haynes, for being here. I've heard you lecture over the years at a few civic groups in town, so I always appreciate your perspective. I had a question. I guess, how would this application degrade the historical preservation of the Merritt Parkway? Can
Well,
you?
Yeah, you know, the state has spent millions of dollars to beautify the parkway. And, you know, one of the goals of the parkway is to provide equitable access to beauty for all Connecticut residents. And this just impedes that goal by just putting something that you would expect to find along I-95 or the Post Road into an environment that is supposed to be naturalistic. So it really does harm the whole experience of the parkway.
And then maybe this might be for Mr. Green, but how close in proximity is this application to the historical Greenfield Hill district?
Well, we consider it part of that area for purposes of POCD. It is in the AAA zone. So, you know, those lines aren't formally drawn because it's an area, it's not a formal district, but it is in the AAA zone, which characterizes most of Greenfield Hill. Or much of Greenfield Hill, I should say.
Thank you. I may have a few more questions, but I will defer now to Commissioner Corsillo. I think you have questions. I'll have to think about a few more things. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a question that I guess really would apply to all of the experts that you'll, I don't know how many you have, but all of them. So I'll ask you. I think one of the challenges of this application, which we've touched on a little bit, is it's not a specific site plan. We could only go by the proposed regulation amendments. So in looking at the impacts that you anticipate and that the experts that you've brought on are anticipating, were you looking at the sort of maximum, I'll call it the worst case scenario of the maximum build conditions, because it's hard,
I am.
just talk, can you talk, talk a little bit about that and just sort of give some questions to the experts.
So I think, as you recognize, this presents an interesting issue in terms of your planning function under 8-2, but I suppose in the lens of 8-30G. So we do speak to sort of the mass, even the conceptual plan speaks to a 39 unit, 5-story building. You can call it 4 stories or 5 stories, but you've all seen the renderings. And so we are certainly addressing the maximum situation, maxing out all those parameters on the site. But that's why I asked Mr. Haynes about reasonable modifications that this commission might consider to address matters of public health, safety, and the environment, and historic resources come under the environmental considerations under Connecticut law. So that's why I have Mr. Haynes and some other speakers who will speak to the historic resource impact.
And I would just say, maybe just something to keep in mind as your experts are coming up, just to, in talking about the impacts, I think we have to consider the impacts under the worst case scenario, because we don't have anything else, anything more specific to look at. And so whether it's the impact or potential modifications, I think just something to keep in mind that would be helpful for me.
That's why, I will ask each one of them about that reasonable modification question, because I know that's something the commission's going to have to deal with.
Commissioner Levy, then Harrison.
Sure. I'm trying to get a handle on, again, because we don't have a specific site plan. I gather the primary concern is both the height and the mass of this building. Is that correct?
That's correct.
This proposed text amendment, which is, I guess, 5 stories over a garage, which could be about 65 feet. Now, under our existing zoning regulations, in a AAA district, you could actually build, I understand, to 40 feet, which might be 3 or 4 floors, depending on the height of each floor. Would that 40 feet limitation be a problem from your perspective?
I think it would be. And the reason why is that it's on the downhill slope, so you see it from above, and it's going to be breaking the tree line at that point, and there really wouldn't be any way to plant out of the building. I think that on that site, and again, I haven't designed a house for it, but it could probably accommodate a 1 or 2 story building of a limited size footprint.
Now, if memory serves, there was once 2 exits in this general area. It was 44 and 45. And I think steps were taken to, number one, make it safer and also provide a lot more, shielding of the surrounding areas. But I don't even remember where exactly 44 was to you.
We lengthened wherever possible. We lengthened the slowdown lane for exiting. And also, so the entrance lanes were possible, and where we encountered a bridge, we couldn't. So the exits are still in their original locations, but they've been reconfigured on the parkway.
Thank you.
Commissioner Harrison, can I follow up with Commissioner Levy?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, go ahead.
Just because this kind of, what you said about the 40 feet, that's as of right though, isn't it? In that area? I mean, that kind of goes to what Attorney Green was mentioning earlier, that there's as of right privileges in that area for zoning. And I think if the if there's reasonable accommodation for the Mayor Parkland Conservancy is going to give us a lesser building, I think we can't go any lower than what's as of right there. Because, that goes into the idea of potentially imposing standards that are against what our current regulations are.
I think you could decline the regulation.
I think, we're gonna get into, I'm gonna have a conversation with you and Attorney Bellis on the legality standard stuff later. But at least with the potential problem I'm seeing, at least with the reasonable accommodation being proposed by the Mayor Parkway Conservancy is 1-2 stories. when the regulations as of right allow for up to 40 feet. So that I see as a potential problem because but if we follow that logic, we are imposing standards that are contrary to what our current regulations allow. And that kind of goes against what we were talking about with Beach Street, having regulations in place for having standards in place where we have no regulations. I mean, how do you guys, thinking that along those lines, seems like at the very least, what I can potentially fall back on legally would be what's as of right in the area.
You could say it's in a AAA zone and we feel that the AAA zone is appropriate based on the testimony and evidence. You have what you have.
Yeah, I mean, the idea would be you have to follow the regular standards. I find that, and this is hypothetical now, but I find a substantial harm. And statute obliges this commission to make reasonable accommodations, or at least consider them. And if the commission decided that, I think if it had to do with mass, most or at least we can fall back on is what is within our
I agree.
regulations.
I agree. It wouldn't be more restrictive.
Yeah, okay, fair enough. Commissioner Harrison?
Yeah, just a few comments, and forgive me if just indulge me if you don't mind, but back in 2007, I'm dating myself here. I was on the RTM, and we actually enacted a demolition delay ordinance that would require a 60-day hold on tearing down historical structures that were over 100 years to allow preservationists to work on property owners towards perhaps an alternate to demolition. In 1997, Fairfield was one of 50 towns in Connecticut that was certified into the Certified Local Government Program, which has a goal of facilitating cooperation with the state and other partners to promote historical preservation. So this isn't really an area we delve into very much on the commission, but I think I think historical preservation is important. We're a very old town and our history dates back to 400 years or so. So I think this is a very interesting component to this application. It's something that we should consider. Has the application to, I guess, Mr. Green, have you reached out to any other historians, preservationists about this area, about this application that could attest to preservation?
Stay tuned.
Okay,
Or-
all right, I'll be here.
That's a great segue.
Okay,
Yes,
Which, unless there's any other questions.
no, that was, thank
thank you. Yeah.
Why don't we use that then as a segue? Oh, you have one, sorry,
Yeah,
Commissioner
just
Lee.
one
Oh, and okay.
I mean, in terms of the proposed text amendment, it provides a building with a total of 39 units. I mean, if we could perhaps permit 39 units, it would be, but limited to 40 feet. Would that be preferable to 6 stories?
I'm sorry.
Well, the proposed text amendment is to allow up to 39 units
Correct.
and 5 stories over a garage. If it were to be, do we have a problem with the 39 units as long as they're kept under 40 feet?
We do because of well, I'll leave it to Mr. Haynes, but my understanding from his earlier testimony is that presents a level of bulk that would be imposing. Well, I'll leave it to Mr. Haynes.
Yeah, and the site is too shallow. If it could permit that bulk, if the site was deeper and you could get it farther away from the parkway and the land dropped off away from the parkway. But where it's sited right now could not accommodate that bulk.
This is right between Congress and the Parkway. correct?
Yes.
So it's on the southern side of Congress, yeah.
I can just, Mr. Chairman, I was just doubling back and I just wanted to check that I was right, but on the AAA, on the height, it's 3 stories or 40 feet, whichever is less.
Whatever the regulation says, and I don't
Yeah.
remember what it
Yeah,
is.
so I just wanted to clarify that.
Attorney Bellis, I think you want to ask a question, right?
Couple questions, yeah. I know it's not a courtroom, so.
No, it's not. I think cross-examination is allowed. Normally people don't, applicants don't because they just do it on rebuttal, but Attorney Green, I think that's allowed, right?
No, yeah, whatever, that's
Yeah,
fine.
I'm not gonna belabor it.
Commissioner, Attorney Bellis.
Sir, can you tell me, do you know what the width is of the right of way for the Merritt Parkway in terms of feet?
In terms of the right of way for the parkway.
Yeah.
It's, we have a 25-foot shoulder. And then we have basically 32-foot travel sector with a variable median on it that varies up to about 12 feet wide. And then the south shoulder is 120 feet. So there's more depth between between the right of way and the adjoining properties on the south shoulder. So the north is really a very tight fit for anything built on the north side of the.
You used the word corridor in your testimony. Do you consider the corridor to be beyond the right of way that you've described?
No, I consider the right of way and the corridor, because the corridor is really, the plantings are part of the transportation structure.
I just want to be clear if I.
The
The
travel lanes.
corridor is the same as the right of way?
Yes, yes.
And would you agree with me that the existing house at 1477 Congress Street to the southbound lane is 340 feet away?
The existing house?
Yes, on 1477 Congress.
I haven't put a tape on it, so.
Your question is from the physical house
Yes.
to the concrete of the Merritt Parkway.
Yes.
It's 25 feet from to the concrete to the edge of that property line of the house, but I don't know how far the house is set back from the
I think you
edge of the property
I
line.
think you've answered my questions. I would.
Attorney Green, anything else?
I have nothing for you of this witness.
Get to that segue then, okay.
Thank you. I'd next like to call Todd Bryant here this evening. While we're just kind of a footnote and a side note, we appeared before the commission 5 years ago on a 8-30G that was the property that now is Hartford Healthcare. And at the time, there was an expert who appeared for the applicant who assured everyone that you would never see any of those buildings from the Parkway. I don't know if you recall it, and yet we see those buildings from the Parkway when you're coming down both hills. And I just, it is what it is, I suppose, but it is visible. Okay, Mr.
I
Bryant.
seem to recall though, I think it was Attorney Russo saying maybe you'd see it for like a half a second or something coming down the hill northbound, and they acknowledged that it was gonna be seen
Well,
going southbound.
It's much more than a half a second, and when I appeared before you this past
I had a
fall
video
on
of
the
it.
sign issue.
Yeah, I had a video of it, I thought, too.
Yeah,
Hi-ho there, so.
yeah.
But there's no big sign.
There's no big sign.
Thank you.
The hi-ho is a big sign.
Thank you.
but That's
It's iconic.
iconic, yes.
Okay, Mr. Bryant, can you just describe for the commission what you do?
I'm a historic preservation professional. I'm a principal at Heritage Resources in Norwalk, which is a historic preservation consulting firm. I have a master's degree in historic preservation from Goucher College. I meet the Secretary of the Interior standards for architectural historian, and historic preservation. I've been in this business for 15 years. I've gotten 6 preservation awards from Preservation Connecticut. And in 2022, I was named a distinguished alumnus of my grad school. I've done 18 National Register nominations, countless other historic resource inventories in various towns around Connecticut. So I know the business pretty well. I've seen a whole lot of buildings and worked on a lot of different projects, spoken to more than one zoning commission. So thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight.
And are you familiar with the Merritt Parkway?
I certainly am.
And would you like to discuss its historic significance without repeating too much of what Mr. Haynes had on?
I'll do my best, but the significance is pretty much the significance. We should actually have Paul Newman here talking about it. But in any event, the Merritt Parkway is not an ordinary road. It is in fact a park with a road in it. That's the way it was envisioned by the people who built it. The first section opened on June 29th, 1938. And it was meant to ease traffic on the post road because of course there was no I-95. So any north-south traffic was on the post road. And it was also designed to provide a soothing rather than annoying drive. I know that's hard to believe right now. But it is still possible to do this. There are many moments where it's not, but it is still possible. The entire road is listed in the National Register of Historic Places, which is unusual in itself. The landscape is a major element of its design and its significance, and that's the way it was thought of from the beginning. And I'm going to read a little bit from Chris Wig from the National Register nomination, written by Chris Wigren, who's now the deputy director of the Preservation Connecticut. It was listed 1991. He says the Merritt Parkway is of national significance as an outstanding and largely intact example of early 20th century parkways created by an outgrowth of the City Beautiful movement. It was the first divided lane, limited access road in Connecticut. The Merritt is significant in the history of transportation because it culminated a generation of experiments in combining the talents of engineers, landscape architects, and architects to create parkways that served recreational purposes and gave aesthetic pleasure while providing safe transportation. In it, all the best features developed by its predecessors were put together to create the quintessential park. That is his statement of significance for the Merritt Parkway, and I think we could all pretty much agree with that.
Mr. Bryant, at my request, what tasks did you perform with respect to the proposed text and map amendment?
I reviewed it in terms of its possible impact on the parkway, the visual impact and its impact on the view shed and landscaping. Not to mention the intent of making the Merritt Parkway a pleasant drive.
And what did you conclude after reviewing that?
I concluded that this building is, I think the technical term is way too big. It's just going to loom over the landscape in that particular location. It will block it will work directly against all the work that is done by landscape architects and architects over time to make this a pleasant rural landscape.
And reaching, and I don't mean to cut you off, but in reaching that conclusion, do you agree with Mr. Redmond and Mr. Haynes in terms of the visibility of the site from the parkway and the parkway from the site?
Absolutely.
And I cut you off. I didn't.
Oh, no, I was pretty much just babbling at that.
I assume though, when you're saying it's gonna impair the Merritt Parkway, we're again assuming, as Commissioner Corcel suggested, a maxed out building.
Yeah.
What the proposed text amendment allows.
Right.
And to assist the commission, in your view, are there modifications that could be made to the text amendment that would minimize or eliminate the impacts that you speak of?
Well, from what I heard, there is an as of right 44. But I mean, the short story is that the building is entirely just the mass of the building is too much. It just overwhelms the site. So the modification would be to make it lower, less visible from the parkway. And one of the things that I learned in that grad school is that you get what you're zoned for, as you guys know better than I did. So if there is a maximum allowed in this text amendment, you will get the maximum.
Commissioner Corcel?
We keep talking about height, but the other thing, talk about the proximity of a building to the parkway and how that could impact the parkway, because I think something else that we may consider is, are there setback requirements that should be imposed in conjunction with it, height restrictions?
Well, on this lot, I don't think you can get it much further from the parkway. I mean, further from the parkway, I think as Mr. Haynes mentioned, if you could get it down the slope as opposed to on the top of the rise, that would help a lot. But for this site, I don't think there's any, you couldn't move it much further back.
Just so the commission is aware, the text amendment proposes a rear setback of 50 feet. 50 feet. And based on Mr. Haynes,
Merritt Parkway itself.
well, it's a rear, from the rear property line,
Yeah,
which is,
property line, yep,
yeah.
sorry, that's what I meant.
so.
How about landscaping? Normally, we say if there's a way of shielding a big building from neighbors and such. Let's assume 40 feet at this point. Let's just let's say 50 feet. Or even, well, strike. Let's assume they're maxed out here and is there a way of landscaping it? And if you put a row of 10, 15, 20-foot arborvitaes to try and block it, how does that row of arborvitaes look to Merritt Parkway?
You know, it's better than nothing. But you'd still have a huge mass. You'd still see it above the.
Still see it above it. I mean, how does a big row, big wall of arborvitaes look?
You'd have, well, I mean, I'm not a landscape architect, so I can't really speak to that.
I think, can I follow up on that?
Go ahead.
You're familiar with the topography of the parkway that Mr. Haynes testified to, and that sort of this valley concept. Are you familiar with that?
That it's in, that it, you know, as you come down, you come down to it at both, you know, from both directions.
So does that
So that you
impact?
see it, no matter what, you're coming down at it from above. So there is that. And then one other thing that I just wanted to add that came out of this National Register nomination was that the guiding principle for all the employees working on this project was to reconcile their work with the natural setting.
Commissioner Levy, then Harrison.
Yeah, just for, placing it in context in the site. If memory serves, this parcel is just slightly up from the lowest, I think the lowest point is right at the exit ramp.
Right.
And this is a slight bit up on Congress Street, probably about 20 feet higher than the nadir there. It's a hill going up to it.
Right.
Does that in any way, the fact that it's higher than the bottom of the exit ramp, does that impact in any way on its visibility or problem?
Absolutely. I mean, it makes it much more visible.
Mhm. And I guess the proposed text amendment is a 50-foot rear setback, which is also what our current zoning provides for. I mean, is there something that you would recommend? Let's say we had to go with the existing 50-foot setback requirement. Would there be any accommodation or what could be done in that 50 feet that might be of value here? Do you have any thoughts?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I mean, it's again, it's a large mass put in a very visible location.
If I can jump in. So those regulations contemplate a residence or residential use, and there are sort of natural market forces that would probably make someone not want to build their home 50 feet off the right of way of the Merritt Parkway, although on I-95, I've seen it in other places, probably on the Merritt in some places, but here you're being asked to once again create or allow this text amendment that sort of opens the door to a really dense development on the site that could be as close as 50 feet. So just.
And from a planning perspective, it could be the camel's nose. To go into a AAA zone there. You go into a AAA zone and allow a multifamily development of this magnitude.
G. Commissioner Harrison.
Thank you. I'm just curious, and maybe this might be more for Attorney Ballas, but I'm just curious, is there a bus stop in this vicinity, a grocery store, any of those amenities that people need? I mean, I go up there, I don't see any large grocery stores, quite frankly. But if I'm living in affordable housing, I may not have a car. So is this really, I'm just curious, like, is this really the right place for an affordable housing district? I'm not really sure.
Well, we can ask Attorney Bellis that later. I assume we know the answer to that from Attorney Green and witnesses. Go ahead.
I don't know of any there.
Yeah.
I don't know,
Yeah.
public transportation, any schools, any grocery stores. There is a liquor store, I understand, in the High Hope. Besides that.
Yeah, and I would also just note, and I'm sure this is in the record, our current P O C D, the one that we have right now from 2016, says zoning regulation amendments which would increase permitted density of development in this Greenfield Hill section should be discouraged in order to preserve the character of the town. This P O C D, the one that we have right now, has the different districts, different neighborhoods, if you will. I think there are 11 of them. So that I think that should be noted in the record if it's not already.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Attorney Green,
Nothing further.
Attorney Bellis, I assume.
Just one or two questions, if that's okay.
Green, thank you.
Is it your testimony that the historic preservation that you're seeking to provide goes beyond the actual corridor that you're talking about?
Well, yes, the view shed of the, of the parkway, which was certainly taken into account by those who built it and designed it.
And how far out are you suggesting that the protection be? Would it be a mile, 2 miles?
I couldn't tell you.
You couldn't tell me? If you're claiming it as a protection
Well, it's not-
beyond the corridor?
Sorry, Attorney Bellis, just ask him.
I just wanted to clear that.
No, just ask it benignly, though. We don't need to, this isn't.
I can't help myself.
Yeah, it's
No,
beyond
it's
my
fine.
expertise.
We're no jury here.
Fair enough. He's answered the question.
Thank you. I have nothing further for Mr. Bryan.
I guess we are the jury, but that doesn't, still not court. I'm sorry, Attorney Green, anything else?
I think Mr. Bellis's question reverses the notion it's the parkway that's being impacted on by the development.
Gotcha.
And I have another witness.
No, that's fine. Let's keep going, yeah.
All right, well, I just wanted to very quickly mention the 1834 house on the property, which has been not mentioned here at all. And I understand that, I mean, I see that it's carved out in the drawings, but there's no real protection to that house. And it's an important historic asset to the town of Fairfield. So, and it's in exceptionally good condition. So someone should, I think that should be taken into.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I would like to call David Parker, who's online.
We have him. Thank you.
I'm here, although I don't seem to be able to turn my video on.
That's okay. If that's the least of our concerns, I think, so.
That's fine. Okay. Well,
If you could just introduce yourself, name and address, and tell the town briefly about your education, training, and experience, I'd appreciate it.
I'm David Parker, an architect, and I have a firm that's been based in Southport for over 35 years. I am a historic preservation specialist. I am a graduate of the University of Virginia and the Harvard Graduate School of Design. I have extensive experience in the field of preservation. I serve on the board of the Merritt Parkway Conservancy and have for 15 years, and I serve as its vice chair. Additionally, I am on the board of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, where I previously served as its representative of historic sites and councils. I am a fellow of the American Institute of Architects, and I've also been asked to speak on behalf of the Fairfield Museum, who's by its executive director and on behalf of its board, who have reviewed and are very concerned and opposed to this text amendment.
Excuse me, can I just interrupt? I would just say, I think Mr. Mullen or Harrigan, Ms. Harrigan, can we put on Mr. Parker's video so we can see him?
You just said, Commissioner Harrison, he's having trouble.
Oh, okay, because I know when I logged on, I couldn't access my camera because of security issues, so that's all.
I can't start my video because it's disabled by the host.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll,
Yeah, go ahead.
all right, we're working on it on your end, but keep going, please.
All right.
Sure.
So
Try your video now.
Still not working.
There we
Yeah.
go.
there it
Still-
is.
Yeah, well. Okay.
All right, Mr. Parker, you are familiar with the Merritt Parkway as a member of the board of the Merritt Parkway Conservancy, correct?
Yes.
Can you briefly also describe the historic significance of the parkway?
Parkway is significant nationally. It is it's quite extraordinary. One of the earliest examples of a throughway built as a parkland setting, and is admired across the country. And I can speak on behalf. I mean, being on the board of the National Trust for Historic Preservation, I am frequently asked by people across the country who comment and admire the significance of this as a historic resource.
Thank you. And at my request, did you study the impacts of a potential development pursuant to the proposed text amendment on the Merritt Parkway?
I did, yes.
And you're familiar with the visibility of the site from the parkway, both in terms of the landscaping and the topography that both Mr. Redmond, Mr. Haynes, and Mr. Bryant spoke to?
I am. Yes.
And what did you conclude as to the impacts of a potential project under this text amendment on the parkway?
I'm concerned at two levels. One is being an architect, by the way. This is the sort of thing that I look at all the time, and so I am distressed both by the conceptual plans that are proposed, but I'm alarmed by the potential that the text amendment would allow, and I'll speak more to that later. But because of the sightlines, and because this is the type of thing that I study frequently, and previously was asked, how far away does this need to be? This has to do, a view shed has to do not only, it's not just the number of feet away from the historic resource, it's also how it's sited. And so the siting of this could not be more concerning because of the topography and the terrain of the parkway and relative to this property.
And what would the impacts be on that from those concerns?
There's no question about its visibility, and the mass and scale of this will loom and will forever irreparably affect and harm the National Register historic resource that is the Merritt Parkway.
And if you had to quantify the likelihood of that harm, what would you quantify it at?
100%.
And that's once again, just from, you indicated the bulk, the height, potential bulk, height, and nature of that, of a potential development under the text amendment.
Yes.
And I know the commission's going to ask this, so I'll get to it. There's a discussion on distinguishing between the impacts of a residential structure that's similarly sited versus this. Can you just distinguish those impacts?
The footprint of a building impacts the overall height of it. And what has been referenced in earlier discussions this evening was the foot in height that is allowed by right in this AAA zone. I would point out that 40-foot height is measured according to Fairfield zoning to the midpoint of the roof. So if you imagine the wider a building becomes, the higher the peak could go. So the wider it becomes, the higher that peak moves. And so the midpoint moves more slowly. So the mass of the building and the width and size of its footprint does portend a consideration that is hard to imagine, certainly for lay people. But in the case of a text amendment like this, it's especially frightening.
Okay. So let me ask you this. As part of your work as an architect, have you been involved with the review or preparation of plans for both residential and commercial buildings? I'm sorry, you cut out for a moment.
Yes.
Okay. And do you, as part of your work, can you just discuss the considerations with respect to a development in terms of, or a development of this type, in terms of sort of infrastructure improvements such as driveways, sidewalks, lighting, access to transit, and the like?
Yes, of course. Well, in the case of projects like this, and this is anticipated to be proposed as an 830G project, which has been mentioned, but I'll underscore, does suggest that projects like this should be in proximity to, in walking proximity to bus stops and public transit and convenience stores, etc. And if you think about where this project is proposed, there are no sidewalks here. There are no street lamps here. The closest bus stop is something like half mile away. So, and I've driven on this road many, many times, and many of you have, or all of you have too, I'm sure. The thought of driving down this road and not being able to see a pedestrian precariously walking on the edge of the pavement at 10 or 11 at night is really frightening. And imagine the poor person trying to go through the underpass where there are no sidewalks to get to this location, which is really stranded in terms of those kinds of amenities, and it really doesn't. It doesn't equate to this type of facilities and amenities that would be best served by an 830G project.
And based upon your education, training, and experience, do those deficits create issues that implicate public health and safety?
No, there's no question in my mind, no.
And would you suggest then that there's a reasonable likelihood of harm that would result from a development of that kind being cited at 1477 Congress Street?
Absolutely.
And if you had to quantify the likelihood of harm over time, how would you quantify that?
Over time, 100%.
And the type of harm, once again, would be some sort of a pedestrian incident.
Public safety, yes. There are no sidewalks in this area, and there are no street lamps.
And just to aid the commission in terms of either of the aspects you spoke about tonight, both in terms of impact on the historic resource that is the Merritt Parkway and sort of these public health and safety or personal safety concerns, are there modifications that could be made to the plan that would satisfy those concerns? As you sit here, can you see those?
Modifications that would improve the public, the safety aspects of this?
To this site?
it's not it's not within the site. It is the remoteness of this site relative to those amenities that is really problematic. So it would mean improvements to the town's infrastructure that and which would change the basic character of this bucolic rural setting, which I can't imagine.
And in terms of the impacts on the sort of the view shed or viewscape and its impact on historic structures, are there modifications in your view that could be made that would minimize those impacts?
Because of the topography here relative to the sightlines and the topography of the Merritt Parkway, a structure here should not be any higher than is allowed by existing zoning. And I've looked at the topo, and I've looked at other. In fact, the property that was mentioned at Black Rock Turnpike, we actually analyzed that very carefully, and at the time warned about its visibility, which actually came true. So I have the same concerns here, if not greater.
Thank you. I have no further
And
questions.
I assume not just height, but size and bulk, as you discussed earlier, the bigger the building, the potential higher it is, but so not just the height, going back to the height of what the regulations are, I presume you also mean the bulk and the size and what's allowable as far as, size of the building currently.
I do, and actually to that point, and I alluded to this earlier, but I'm very, very concerned that what you are being asked to review is a text amendment, and you're being asked to only consider the drawings that have been proposed as conceptual, and being an architect, being a professional, this is what I do. This is really, I think, putting the cart before the horse, and I think I don't think I seriously feel that this will create problems down the road, and for all of you. And there was what I might reference, what I can reference recently. It was not in Fairfield, but it was in Westport, a very similar situation where the Planning and Zoning Board was asked to consider a text amendment. This was for something called the Hamlet, and they approved the text amendment, and then it created a really a really problematic path for the Planning and Zoning Board because they suddenly were presented with something that none of them had imagined, because it didn't comport with what they had visualized when the text amendment was suggested. And I really would be very, very cautionary about this.
Was that an 830G application that you're discussing?
No.
No, that's
No.
why, your point's well taken though. Okay. Commissioner Corsillo?
It had an affordable component,
Yeah,
but
okay.
it did not.
I just want to understand the standard behind it.
I'm not sure to what extent we could consider this in thinking through accommodations, but since you're here and we have it to consider, as an architect, I mean, we do have architectural design standards in our regulations. From an architectural perspective, in terms of the impact on the parkway, are there things that could be done or required to mitigate that impact in terms of building design, whether, fenestration, materials, anything other than the things that we've already talked about, like height and bulk?
The ridge, the long continuous ridge of the building is a huge problem at the height, and which could be even higher because of the way the text amendment is proposed. And so you don't normally get in this area a ridge line that is unbroken at that height. That's a huge problem. The footprint and the mass of the building is completely inappropriate. And the other thing, we're talking now about the Merritt Parkway, but I would also be remiss if I didn't reference the 1834 house that this building will loom over. I didn't see a dimension on the site plan, but I think the proposed building, which is suggested to be 40 feet high, is only something like 15 feet from the two-story building, and it's that close on two sides, and so it will literally loom over and overwhelm the historic house. And that historic house, and I reviewed, I know it from the outside, but I also have reviewed the inside, and it retains almost all of its original character defining features, and it would really be unfortunate and inappropriate, in my opinion, for a building of this mass and scale to be built in the proximity that is proposed here.
Thank you. Anything else, or can I turn to Attorney Bellis? I have to keep things moving if we can. Is that
I
okay?
have a question.
Okay, Commissioner Collins, go ahead.
Hi, Mr. Parker, thank you for your time. It's Peter Collins, I'm a commissioner. The Merritt Parkway, it's probably one of the few highways that inspire reverence and a cult-like devotion among its fans and supporters, me included. Many of whom use it, myself, daily, or live near its winding path through Connecticut's Fairfield County. But I wanted to kind of, it's not only a picturesque tour of a renowned landmark, but I believe it's the largest Art Deco design in the world. Am I correct?
It's certainly the most expansive with its bridges. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And I think something like this would just completely degrade its picturesque view and tour of the whole park in itself.
I agree. I feel this would.
Thank you.
Hey, Bellis?
Sure. Do you have an opinion whether the volume of traffic that we have currently on the Merritt Parkway has a much greater impact on the quote Pleasant Drive than having a structure on 1477 Congress Street?
I'm not a traffic engineer, so I can't speak to that. The visual impact of an experience of the person driving in a car is it's peripheral, and I think that is what we're speaking of, and I don't. It's hard to discuss cars in the same context or in the same way that we talk about permanent structures, because permanent structures are just that, they're permanent structures.
Other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Parker. Okay, next thing we want to talk about is,
How much more do you have? Let me ask you that, because
I have two more witnesses and probably about, I don't know, probably in total about 20 minutes.
How long is it?
20 minutes, you said, times whatever. Okay, just because I see the time and I'd like to get to the public.
Sure. So the next thing is environmental impact on wetlands, water courses, and stormwater management. As you're aware, the property contains wetlands and map water courses that are highly sensitive to hydrologic changes. The current site supports natural stormwater infiltration and groundwater recharge. It's largely impervious, and it would replace large areas of these systems with a massive impervious footprint, rooftop areas, driveways, and parking lots based on the proposed text amendment. And it would be our suggestion that the application lacks sufficient analysis or documentation demonstrating that the site can adequately manage, treat, and discharge the increased volume and pollutants from stormwater runoff. I understand we're talking conceptually, but this is again based on what this text amendment would open the door to.
So I guess that kind of segues into the problem that I've been having with this is I understand the historic aspect of it, how that component can be addressed now because you
Yes.
have the potential for the max out.
Yes.
Building specific stuff that we're used to, environmental, drainage, traffic to a lesser extent, because I think there's a report at least provided by the applicant, but at least those two.
Right.
Is for those two, nothing being designed and nothing being provided, at least the town engineer, staff, is the fight now or is the fight potentially later with a site plan?
That's a great question, and I thought about that as well. The fight is now because, first of all,
I guess it can be both.
it emanates from 8-2. And 8-2 of the Connecticut General Statute speaks to ecological harm. We want to adopt regulations that avoid ecological harm. And the second part of that, and we'll cover this quickly, but it would be our position that the development that's proposed cannot, under any circumstances, be accommodated on this site based on those concerns.
Okay.
And
Now,
we'll move quickly.
no, but let me, because this is something I want to discuss with you and to the applicant as well, is, let's assume hypothetically, and I think this is not too far off base, is that we really don't have any evidence for drainage or for environmental impact. Because we certainly don't have anything from our inland wetlands review, because I don't think an application has been made, or I think it's within their jurisdiction, right? Because we're that close.
That's correct.
Yeah, so we don't have anything from them, one way or the other. We don't have a drainage report. I think we're gonna try and ask our staff people to opine as best they can based on what they have. That and we're able to do that outside this public hearing as are our staff agencies. But let's assume that we really don't have anything because nothing has been provided. The burden is on us to prove substantial harm is in the record on the denial.
Yes.
And we've never really had this discussion because normally we get a whole site plan.
Right.
But whose burden is it now for us? Because you would,
I want to say it's the applicant.
I want to say so too, because that's just standard American jurisprudence throughout any kind of application. But if the statute says on appeal, it's our burden, it's not even a switching because we denied it. So it's not even one of those switching things you see in labor laws sometimes, or discrimination. At this point, is the burden on us to find and now put aside the historic aspect, because I think that can be addressed here, but at least environmental and drainage. The burden on us to find a substantial harm.
So belt and suspenders, we would propose to offer, I have two experts who will talk about that even the conceptual plan is inconceivable based on the wetlands on this site and the sort of the bulk of the project.
Not proposing the conceptual plan, though, right?
Well, they're not proposing it, but it's part of the record.
So we're saying that
It is, I mean, it's in the record, right? We've seen conceptual plan is part of the application process, right? So it's
Yeah.
part of the record.
So
As
just-
illustration of potentially the
So our
regulations.
point is that the site is not capable of accommodating a project that would come within the envelope of the regulation.
Okay. All right,
Yes.
that may very well sidestep
The
actually
issue,
where my
Correct.
issue is.
correct.
So
So,
at least put something in the record potentially, and I'll talk to the applicant about that later.
and again, the interests in environmental protection are, and I'm gonna say enshrined in 8-2 and in our POCD. So I'll address both of those.
And to that point though, I mean, we've had this discussion on other applications where engineering and environmental, on other 830G applications where I have said to you, listen, Superior Court's been pretty clear when they say to us, if we're going to deny something, an 830G, we have to deny it based on standards within our regulations. Now, that brings a whole nother host if we don't actually have, potentially in those instances, we had the engineering and we had deep opining positively on the application based on their standards. So we had that. We are allowed to review them, though we don't have particular standards in our regulations to, I guess, apply our own judgment outside of what the town engineer and DEP has. So it's a little different, and I just would put that out there because normally, again, we have our town engineer and or deep or inland wetlands opining for us about on their standards. I would think we can't really go too far into it because we don't have standards of our own adopted in our regulations. So here again is the problem with not having an application in front of us that has a site plan.
And this was what the applicant chose. And to answer the question you asked earlier, and I've been thinking about this just this minute. At a certain point, the applicant had to produce on their case in chief. And once again, this is a public hearing and I appreciate the applicant put on its case. You're hearing from the public, the applicant can rebut. And the applicant, obviously, it can't be new evidence, but they can rebut what we're claiming. But it seems to me that the applicant initially, even in the context of 8-30G, has the burden of putting on sufficient evidence that would enable this commission to sort of make those findings within your regulations to adopt this amendment. And we're suggesting, A, that didn't happen, and B, it cannot happen based on this
Well,
site.
the first part's important because that may be academic, depends on what you do in B. I see it, then I go to Commissioner Harrison. The problem with your first part is our regulations don't necessarily don't have particular standards with engineering, drainage, and with environmental.
Right.
So we're kind of at a loss to, when you present evidence to us as this being a problem, what standards are we gonna be able to apply?
8-2.
Well, that could be, okay, and maybe that's what we do. But the other component, I guess, is assuming you didn't have that, now we have the we go back to your A part, that did they put on a case in chief? And problem I have is the statute puts the burden on us that if we're gonna issue denial, we have to point to specific evidence in the record that have a substantial harm. And if none exist, because there's an absence of it, maybe that the historic aspect we can just because that's been, but maybe the engineering environmentalist has no choice but to save for a later date because we don't have it.
Yeah,
But why don't you, Commissioner Levy, Harrison, or I would suggest maybe letting them go on with their experts unless you have.
Well, I mean, my perspective and my question is, why isn't this a straw horse? I mean, what you're suggesting is that it's, from an ecological standpoint, it's inconceivable that anything built under this text amendment could be built without being a threat to the environment. We don't have a site plan in front of us. At some point, when they do have a site plan, which may or may not look anything like this conceptual drawing, it might be totally different. At that point, based on that site plan, it would have already gone through conservation. And they either would or would not have gotten approval there. And then it would come to us and we would consider the ecological harm. Should we deny it now based upon ecological harm without evidence as to what might or might not be built? Then we risk a court saying later on, well, you denied it without evidence, therefore, that's not a basis. Why shouldn't we just defer this until they have to come back with the site plan?
I would say no. First of all, there'll be several reasons to deny it, so this will be.
But I'm talking just about that one. I'm not talking about anything else.
But the other part is 8-2 specifically says that in adopting zoning regulations, this commission can consider environmental concerns. This applicant chose to come in just with the text amendment and the map amendment. That was their choice. And 8-2 says you can consider it. You must
But I think
consider it.
but is A2 though say, you can consider that when adopting regulations?
Yes.
We didn't adopt the regulations with specific standards with respect to environmental and with respect to drainage. There'll probably be some general stuff maybe you'll point to, but nothing like, hey, listen, you have to apply certain, almost like building codes type standards to engineering.
And there's nothing here that changes our standards.
No.
When it, or it impacts standards one way or the other from an ecological standpoint. I mean, it's still subject to the same conservation and everything else.
It is, but I would suggest that just from 100,000 feet, I would suggest that the commission should not adopt a regulation that would allow a development where there's evidence produced, substantial evidence that says that that envelope, that height, that density cannot be supported on a site. Why would you adopt that regulation?
Well, why don't we listen?
But we don't know that.
Well, we
that's
don't
the
know. Well, Commissioner Harrison, go ahead, but I think we should.
I have a quick question, and this all relates to Commissioner Levy and Commissioner Noonan, your comments. First of all, I'm never a big fan when outside developers, for-profit developers try to write our regulations. I've never been a big fan of that, because I believe that we have full discretion as a commission to write our own regulations and to change them. I guess I would ask the chairman, can we get a legal opinion, even though this is under the guise of affordable housing, 830G, don't we still have the discretion to change the regulations the way we want them to be?
Of course we do.
So I guess, I guess what I'm confused about is the burden of 830G on us because this is an affordable housing district being proposed?
Yes. Well, I
So
don't.
do we
let's-
have
let-
full discretion? Because we don't have to go by what they've written. I mean, right? We don't.
Well, listen, in a
And I
regular,
like,
in a regular text regulation, we are able to amend it how we see fit. Generally, you stay within the footprint in order not to renotice a hearing. But 830G is pretty specific that, and Mr. Levy, help me out too. They can apply for a regulation amendment under the auspices of 830G and the standard of the substantial harm, the standard, that applies to that. So I'm not so, we may be able to amend it in order to do reasonable accommodations. I don't think we can amend it as we normally would under a regulation amendment.
So,
and I would just offer this really quickly, and I'll let you talk, Attorney Green. Look, I'm not an attorney, as many of my esteemed colleagues on the commission are. But I think maybe it behooves us to get a legal opinion on what our rights are here. Because I would like to know, because they're a little fuzzy to me, quite frankly.
Well, that's half the problem with this if this goes up on appeal for whatever reason, it's gonna be a matter of first impression. Cause I haven't found a Superior Court case on it. I think we've reached out to our counsel informally, and they have said exactly the same thing, is that this is a matter of first impression. And there's not much they were able to give other than what we've been discussing as far as not generalities, but the law that we've been discussing, and we're used to, right? Ms.
So
Harrigan?
they can't get, what I'm hearing is we can't get a legal opinion from our own counsel in writing?
I'm saying that we did that informally, and the response to us was, this is kind of a new area that's being tested, and there wasn't much that they could provide us because it is a new area being tested, and they provided us what the general law and what the usual law is that we know of 830G is. So if you want that in writing, we
I guess
can.
what's the difference between informally asking and formally asking? I'm not trying to be fresh here. I'm just like legitimately curious, like what the difference is.
We reached out to them via email and we got that response. So if you want a little bit more, that's fine, but I'm just telling you what was responded to me. So.
Okay, no, very good. No, and I appreciate that context. I was just curious. To me, it would be helpful to know. Cause
More than what I've said, or?
no, look, maybe they won't be able to go beyond of what was stated already. I didn't read that email yet, so I don't know.
I'll talk to Ms. Harrigan and their counsel about it.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set now. Thank you so
One
much.
last question, because I want to get to their experts, because I think that kind of goes to the heart, at least what we've been discussing. Mr. Seaver, go ahead. Oh, sorry.
Maybe I'm stating the obvious, but I assume we never challenged 8.2 from a precedent standpoint about character of the district.
No, I mean, no, not really. I mean, I think that question is a little different than the context we're under. Okay. Well, thank you.
So Attorney Bellis and the materials he submitted, and I couldn't remember the name of the case. He just reminded me it's Eureka. There's a Eureka case is in the record, and the commission may want to read that and ask the town attorney. And I don't want to get involved with a debate with Attorney Bellis on its meaning, but I think it would be a starting point.
All right, I appreciate that. Thank you.
So I want to call.
Your experts, are we?
Yeah. Is Steve Trinkus?
He is.
Mr. Trinkus, you're now the co-host, a co-host. You can turn your video on now, and take yourself off mute if you need to.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman, I did.
Mr. Trinkus, can you just, well, you're not appearing, your camera doesn't appear to be coming on, but
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to turn it off. It's my laptop, which may not be working, but I have audio.
here, things.
Just turn it back on again, see if it works.
Okay.
These guys should have microphones.
All right, never mind. So just,
You might have this camera.
do you have your camera covered?
No, I don't. There's actually a light on my laptop, but it's,
So let's just keep
So,
going.
Mr. Trinkus, can you just, for the record, where are you employed and what do you do?
my name's Stephen Trinkus. I'm a licensed professional engineer, the principal at Trinkus Engineering LLC in Southbury, Connecticut. I do land development work and I specialize in stormwater management, addressing stormwater volumes and water quality in the runoff from impervious surfaces.
And can you just briefly describe your education, training, and experience for the record?
Yes, I have actually a Bachelor of Science in Forestry from the University of New Hampshire back in 1980. I worked for a surveyor engineer after college, passed my professional engineering exam back in '88, and have been self-employed since 1990.
And in terms of training and experience over those 35 years?
I learned engineering from the ground up from other professional engineers. I also attended many workshops in the mid-90s on different aspects of what actually became low-impact development. I have spoken nationally and internationally on low-impact development, including Taiwan, South Korea, and China. And that's really my area of expertise is what we call LID.
And at my request, first of all, are you familiar with the premises at 1477 Congress Street?
Yes, I reviewed the conceptual plans prepared by the applicant.
And you've driven by the site and seen the site from both the Merritt Parkway and Congress Street, is that correct?
I have driven by on Congress Street, not on the Merritt.
And at my request, did you review the site in terms of the potential and conceptual development of the site pursuant to the proposed text amendment?
Yes.
And can you tell me what you did in conducting that review?
I looked at the existing conditions of the site, the delineated wetland boundaries shown on the survey, the extent and location of the 100-year flood line, the location of, the proposed building, what the applicant is showing as compensating flood storage, as well as a very simplistic and conceptual stormwater management system.
And what were your findings in terms of this site in the context of the proposed text amendment?
In my professional opinion, as the majority of the building is located squarely within the limits of the the 100-year floodplain, it is simply, really bad planning to allow a text amendment that would allow building of this size to be located within the limits of a 100-year floodplain. We should be avoiding development of this magnitude within the 100-year floodplain because it takes up storage of floodwaters. And when you eliminate the storage of floodwaters on your site, the floodwaters have to go onto adjacent properties, which will increase the duration and perhaps elevation of the flooding. The applicant is showing an area at the lower end of the site between the two wetland boundaries to be dug out as quote unquote compensating storage for what the building will take up within the floodplain. However, that area is already going to be underwater. Compensating storage typically is provided outside the limit of the actual floodplain so that you increase the storage within a portion of the site that is not subject to the floodplain. This was actually done by my office on the Fischel building down near the Rooster River, where we flattened the grade on the site and expanded the flood elevations quite a ways up into the site as it was surface parking to provide additional storage volume to try and minimize some of the flooding along the Rooster River. which
That's
has
the-
historic flooding.
That's the building on Kings Highway where the Board of Ed is located.
Yes, it is, yes.
Okay, so, on that, topic, you're saying that as a matter of, engineering principles, sound engineering principles, the building and storage should not be within the AE zone, is that correct?
Yes, that is.
And as a result, the stormwater management system is located, again, mostly within the AE zone, correct?
Correct.
That will
Yes.
affect its ability to infiltrate stormwater.
It would, yeah, just to not only infiltrate stormwater, but to treat the runoff. If the system is underwater, then it's not gonna function.
And in terms of the remaining upland area of the site, which, and that's located more proximate to Congress Street, is that correct?
Yes, there's a corner in the northeast portion of the site that is outside the AE zone.
And do you have an opinion as to the capacity of that area to function for stormwater treatment and management?
It's proposed as a part of the building and parking lot outside the AE zone. It may not be feasible to do stormwater under the parking area because we have no soils data on the site.
And what other findings did you make with respect to your review?
I think that was the primary one. That is just really bad land use policy to approve a text amendment that would allow a substantial development within the AE flood zone.
And what about the potential for use of a force main on this site?
Yeah, according to the conceptual plans, they're pumping the sanitary sewer quite a distance to the west to an existing town of Fairfield manhole. As we have under building here, it is the policy of the Connecticut DEP that under building parking must be treated through a hydrodynamic separator and then conveyed to the sanitary sewer system. So you're going to be pumping a lot more runoff in addition to the effluent to the sanitary sewer, which is a substantial distance to the west from this site.
So all right, and on a separate note, based on these findings you've made regarding the proximity, well, actually encroachment into the flood zone, what are the impacts on potential flooding as a result of this development?
Well, if you take up storage on this site by the building, the water has to go somewhere else, and where it's gonna go is on the properties that are immediately adjacent to it. So you'd likely see increases in the water surface elevation on these other properties, and the extent and the duration of flooding would be increased because of the loss of storage within this property itself.
And once again, you studied this in terms of the envelope that is provided by the proposed text amendment and the potential maximum development of the site, correct?
Yes.
And based on that, sort of with those parameters, do you have an opinion as to the likelihood of flooding of adjacent properties, being the properties of Mr. Redmond and Mrs. Toth and the town of Fairfield to the south and I suppose the state of Connecticut also?
If this, text amendment was granted and assuming the building came in as actually what is proposed, which is, not necessarily a given, that, you are gonna have increased flooding on these adjacent properties. I mean, this is a relatively small upland area surrounded by wetlands and the majority of the site within the 100-year floodplain. It should remain as a single-family house, in my professional opinion.
And are you able to quantify the likelihood that there would be off-site flooding resulting from a development that maximizes the development envelope under the regulation?
It is extremely high probability. 85 to 90% of increased flooding, because you're losing a substantial amount of volume within this site, and the water has to go somewhere, and it will go on the adjacent properties.
That's great.
Will it go on the Merritt Parkway?
Well, possibly also the Merit, yes.
I mean, have you, and I asked that if you looked at the topography enough to just say that there's not only the likelihood of the neighboring residences, but on Merritt Parkway itself. I just don't.
Yes,
Merritt Parkway's built up a bit, I think. I'm not think, I haven't really
Yeah.
thought about it, but go ahead.
Along this section, the Merit is not up on top of a hill. It's fairly low. And again, flooding could potentially impact, the Merit during the right storm event. If, we had a similar event as Southbury, where I live, experienced last August, with this being developed, you would have flooded portions of the Merit in this area.
And just so that, make it clear, you're familiar with the proximity of the town of Fairfield property, which is more or less to the south of this property, for example, correct?
Yes.
And just to get into it, we had a discussion this afternoon with George Logan, and he described the condition of that property to the south, correct?
Yes, he did.
And he said that it was extremely, soft ground, extremely, he can describe it when we get to it, but when you talk about flooding to the parkway, would that potentially be something that would be further to the south over other properties from the site, for example?
Yeah, the lower portion of this site is due south, heading towards the Merit, and that would likely be the area that would fill up first, the low spots where the water can spread out. More so.
You're talking more towards the exit ramp then?
Yeah, yes.
Commissioner Corsillo.
Mr. Chinkus, the likelihood of flooding that you talked about, does that contemplate, are there the types of mitigations we would normally see if we were looking at a site plan, stormwater management systems, would those have an impact, a mitigating impact on the kind of flooding you're talking about? Does the likelihood that you projected of flooding contemplate any sort of, what kind of mitigation does it contemplate?
Well, the stormwater management system is not designed to, address loss of flood storage within the site. The way loss of flood storage within the flood zone is addressed is by lowering a portion of the site that's outside the flood zone to provide a compensating storage. So if your building was, as an example, blocking 10,000 cubic feet of, water, then you would excavate a portion of the upland area of the site to provide, 10,000 or maybe a little bit more if the site permitted it, of storage that typically does not flood now, but would be allowed to flood under the future scenario.
So are you suggesting that under the maximum build scenario that would be allowed with these regulation amendments, is it just not possible to mitigate the loss? I forget the terminology used, loss of floods.
It's compensating storage, and there is no area on this plan that is proposed undeveloped within that upland area where you could provide the compensating storage.
Thank you.
We're all set unless there's anything else.
So again, it's your position that there's a likelihood of these conditions being created a strong likelihood of these conditions being created as a result of a development. I'm going to call it a maximum development under the regulation.
Yes.
I have no further questions of Mr. Trinkus.
Yes, thank you. Mr.
Attorney Ballas, go ahead.
Yeah, just a couple questions. Mr. Trinkus, what percent of your business is representing developers for land use?
Probably 70%,
70% of your business is for developers?
correct.
And in that 70% of developers, have you designed retention and detention ponds?
Oh, yes, in many cases.
And could that be done on this property?
The only place you could put a detention pond would be down within the floodplain, which would render it less than desirable because it's likely when it does flood, you don't have storage capacity for your stormwater.
But it can be done, correct?
Well, you could build a pond there. How effective it would be is an open question, in my opinion.
Okay, fair enough.
Green. I think we're all set here with Mr. Trinkus. 50%. Okay. Do you have another witness?
I do, George Logan.
So Logan? Last witness, right?
Can you hear me?
Hear you, yes. You should be able to turn your, there you go.
Okay, there we go. Very good. Good evening, everyone. My name is George Logan. Give you a little bit of my qualifications first, and then give you the assessment of my review of potential adverse impacts based on this conceptual plan. So again, I'm the principal environmental scientist with REMA Ecological Services. We're out of Vernon, Connecticut. As far as my qualifications and my education, I hold a master's degree in natural resources science. Actually, my graduate degree is in natural resources science. And my master's degree is in conservation biology and wildlife management. I have several professional certifications. I'm a registered soil scientist. I'm a professional wetland scientist, and I also have a certification as a senior ecologist through the Ecological Society of America, and I also do business as a wildlife biologist. And I have over 38 years, going on 39, experience in the field. I have reviewed the area, in the subject area. Was at the site yesterday. I reviewed it from the perimeter from Mr. Redmond's property, who's sitting right there. Hello, Mr. Redmond.
Hi.
And also from the town of Fairfield site property, which is to kind of the southwest, and I also travel along the, I guess, the eastern property boundary along the right of way of the Merritt. What I can tell you that even with these conceptual plans, in my professional opinion, there is a lack of baseline data or just basic due diligence before you put a plan together, even in conceptual phase. For instance, there are no soil test pits anywhere, including the area for the proposed stormwater infiltration galleries that are proposed on those moderate 15–16% slopes above the wetland that's off-site, which, as I said, is preserved property owned by the town. Interestingly enough, the Connecticut Soil Survey indicates that the soils in the uplands in this area and the subject property of what we call the Charlton-Chatfield Soil Series Complex. That's the dominant upland soil type. And it's interesting that Chatfield soils are considered to be shallow to bedrock. So again, soil test pits would have been important to figure out what's going on here, whether we have an underlying bedrock situation. And because we're on the top of a little knoll here. There's also no discussion on the potential sensitivity of the resources on the site or off-site immediately, both uplands and wetlands. So based on our review of the ecological resources associated with the site, let me report my following observations. There is a watercourse, as you know. You've probably seen some maps. There's a watercourse associated with the site. It's considered perennial. It has a watershed that's over 250 acres, which probably explains why we have an AE zone. Much of the watershed is wooded and it's protected. It includes land that's being set aside. Its average percentage of impervious areas, and this is an important point, within the watershed is reported by USGS stream stats to be around 5%, which is quite low and probably speaks to good to very good water quality, also based on what I was looking at yesterday. And this is certainly a Class A surface water resource classification by deep. Now, there are two distinct wetland resources that are associated with the site. To the southeast, closer to the Merritt, there is a shallow pond slash, if you want, a marsh system. It's been kind of filling over the years. Probably Mr. Redmond used to swim in it, but I don't think he can swim in it anymore because of all the vegetation that's grown there is basically filled out, and it's a shallow marsh system with quite deep organics at this point, which are a little dangerous, as I discovered yesterday, to go through. And the stream that we talked about goes through that pond, so it's a on the line stream, if you will, and it has, in my view, a moderate to high functioning resource. It's moderately diverse, and it lacks invasive species within its core. Now, the more important wetland is to the southwest, sorry, and this is a very high functioning wetland. I was pleasantly surprised yesterday. As you can imagine, I've seen thousands of wetlands over the years, and this one really caught my attention. It's a mosaic of what you would call a scrub shrub, an emergent, or a marsh and forested wetland. It's characterized by moderately deep organic soils that are 3 feet to 4 feet or more, again, based on probing off-site. That's basically mucks, as we will call them, and it has a very high diversity of native vegetation. Includes many species that are considered sensitive to pollution. So these are indicator species of very high quality of water. And it's continually saturated and or semi-permanently flooded portions of it. Always has water in there, except during extreme droughts, obviously. So it has a very high, in my view, ecological integrity, much more so than the pond marsh system that I just described, which is closer to the Merritt. And we observed, myself and my colleague who was with me, my associate, observed several avian species that are relatively uncommon, including warbling vireo and wet-eyed vireo. And there's probably a lot more if I spend more time there, which is kind of interesting because it's a kind of in a little bit of a depressional area. It's not influenced, its ecological integrity is not influenced to any great extent from the Merritt, which is kind of a little bit surprising. That's more the case for the other system. Now, this is what we would call a mesotrophic system, which means that it's sensitive to pollution associated with degraded water quality, and that's both surface waters and groundwater. Interestingly enough, one of the things that I did in my review is I queried the Connecticut DEP's natural diversity database, and it's told me, and I can certainly provide the data if requested, that the surrounding area, including the site, is known to harbor eastern box turtles, which is, of course, as you probably have heard, a species of special concern. So it's listed in Connecticut. Okay, so what does this all come down to? It's my professional opinion that even in this conceptual phase, we can identify several adverse impacts, that is, impacts to natural resources that would more than likely be irreversible. And I guess this is based on a conceptual plan. One thing that's interesting is that we have an 11-fold increase in impervious surfaces. And one of the things that I want to impress upon the commission is that when it comes to impacts from stormwater, impervious surfaces is a key thing, a key indicator to look at. We have about, under existing conditions, between, say, 1,800 and maybe 1,900 square feet of impervious surfaces. You know, the driveway is gravel, the parking field in front of the garage is gravel, so those are not considered impervious surfaces. But this 11-fold increase in impervious surface on the site And in my view, the most likely inadequate stormwater management system, since we don't have data and where it sits above the wetland, will in all likelihood result in a degradation of the water quality of the receiving wetland that I just described, the nicer one, as well as result in significant adverse changes in vegetation quality and diversity over the span of just a few years after development, which would include the proliferation, unfortunately, of invasive plant species that are right at the edge of this wetland down into the core. And this again is all tied to this tremendous increase in impervious surfaces. Even the most effective stormwater management system, as you probably know, cannot completely attenuate pollution associated with this type of development. The reason that this wetland is so exceptional is because there's not much impervious surfaces it doesn't receive anything from the merit because the watercourse itself bypasses, as you can see in the maps, and goes through the interchange and goes into, I think it's called Cricker Brook, which is another major watercourse. So the ecological integrity of both wetlands, but especially the one to the northwest, in my view, will be adversely affected due to the intensity of development and seen in the conceptual plans. This would also, in my view, compromise the ecological integrity of resources on adjacent properties, such as the one to the immediate north of this Mr. Redmond's property. Also, something else that's interesting, there are several large diameter trees, and Mr. Redmond can speak about that, very close on his property, very close to the boundary between the subject property and his. And the proposal is seen, as you've seen it, on the plan shall result in, I believe, severe damage to the root systems, which result in the dying off of these trees over a span of maybe 2 to 4 years following development. As you can see from the plans, the proposed parking lot and probably a little bit of associated grading beyond that will be placed within just a few feet of the northern property boundary. So just to bring this into a conclusion, it's my opinion, based on my experience, based on my education, that even in this conceptual planning phase, this development would result in significant adverse impacts to the natural resources, both on-site and off-site.
And
Thank you for taking time to consider my testimony, Mr. Green.
yes, and are you able to quantify the likelihood of the harm that you have testified to?
Pretty high, more than likely. So it's a high likelihood scenario. Again, as you probably all know, we can, in my field, we can't be 100% sure, but on the preponderance of the evidence that I see here, of viewing the site, viewing what's being proposed as concept, it's much more highly likely than not for these adverse impacts to take place.
But just to put a pin on it, is it highly likely that one of those aspects of harm would occur as a result of the conceptual design?
Yes, absolutely.
Any reasonable accommodations that could be made? We've been discussing tailoring it back to what the current regulations allow. Anything that you can think of for reasonable accommodations to mitigate the concerns you've raised?
You can.
You can, yeah.
Well, here's the thing. So if you look at the plan, I'm sure you've seen it, the building is 100 feet wide. It's almost 150 feet long. Apart from the fact that it's within the A zone, it's on this knoll, if you will. And so it's limited from the amount of space that exists here to put such a massive building. The applicant has tried to stay away from the resources, but it's still too close. And I think, again, it's the impervious surfaces. So the key thing here, again, is impervious surface. So if the impervious surfaces were reduced by more than 50%, I could start feeling a little more comfortable to say that there could be accommodations that could take place on this site to get below what I would call it adverse impacts.
Thank you. Commissioner Lee.
Yeah, Mr. Logan, The northwestern wetland that you described, is that in the vicinity of Cricker Brook, is it? Is that the one you're speaking of?
Right, so this is an unnamed watercourse that goes through the site and then through the edge of the nicer wetland. And then it goes under the entrance, the exit, if you will, for the Merritt. And on the other side of it is Cricker Brook, if I recall. And that Cricker Brook goes in a easterly direction, if I recall.
How far is the northwestern wetland from the property at 1477 Congress?
The western wetland from which prop?
From the property at 1477 Congress.
So this wetland comes into 1477. There's probably about, I would say, 35 to 40 feet extension of this wetland that I'm describing within this property. And then, of course, it is much larger going further to the southwest.
So it actually encroaches upon the property, correct?
Correct, yes. And I could tell you by a quick measurement how much of a wetland we have on this property, just by a quick measurement. So I got the map in front of me here. I have a calculation. So there's about 4,400 square feet of this wetland on said property.
Thank you. Attorney Green, anything else?
I have nothing further.
Attorney Bellis?
Just a couple questions. Mr. Logan, you're not licensed or a registered engineer, are you?
No, I'm not. I'm a scientist.
And you saw on the plans where it says stormwater system, do you recognize those to be underground galleys?
I did, yes.
And don't you agree that underground galleys take off impervious surface water and store them in those galleys?
Well, one thing, as I mentioned, is we don't know what's in that area of the stormwater galleys. That's number one. But as I also mentioned, even in my experience and kind of reading the literature, even galleries don't 100% take care of pollution. They do to a great extent. But the problem with this particular wetland that it's so sensitive and so, it is what it is, that any increase of impervious surface could potentially have an impact. And certainly a large, massive portion that's 11-fold from what's there today will certainly have an adverse impact in my mind. Again, I'm not an engineer, I'm just a scientist, but I read the literature.
Okay. I read the literature too. I don't read it that way. Do you see a flood storage replacement area on this conceptual site plan above the wetlands?
I do.
I thought we call that a retention or a detention pond area.
Right now it says flood storage replacement area.
Fair enough. I have no other questions.
Just briefly, Mr. Logan, you heard Mr. Trinkus speak about the fact that you could not have an effective system like that between the wetlands. You heard his opinion on that, didn't you?
That is correct. And I've been involved in many projects with other engineers, and I know that it's a common practice not to do flood storage compensation below within the AE. Usually want to go above it. Recent project in Bloomfield, for instance, they extended the floodplain into the upland and gathered that compensation there. And they actually ended up being able to create a wetland there too at the same time.
I just have one last question. Mr. Logan, were you surprised to find a wetland of that quality right next to the Merritt Parkway, right next to it?
Undoubtedly, I did not expect this. I was very surprised.
Thank you. We're all set.
Okay. So I'll go quickly now.
Please, yeah, and I know it's not just you. We commission ask questions too.
Yes,
so, but
thank you. So I'm just gonna go through a couple of arguments quickly. The first is the notion of spot zoning and deviation from the comprehensive plan.
This amendment, once again, applies to a single parcel in an otherwise stable, single-family residential area. And it introduces the potential for a high-density, multi-story structure. And we would suggest that spot zoning is an issue here. The plan of conservation and development emphasizes the preservation of historic character, natural resources, and existing neighborhood form, and this obviously subverts those goals. And just to get, and I'm not gonna, let me just go through the POCD briefly. First of all, as was noted earlier, it is incompatible with the vision for Greenfield Hill, which the POCD 2016 identifies. First of all, to set the table for that, 8-2 requires that zoning regulations be made in accordance with the comprehensive plan. So the inconsistency of this plan is legally and substantially significant. Once again, it's incompatible with the vision for Greenfield Hill, where it talks about single-family homes, mature tree cover, stone walls, scenic ways, and that sort of thing. Replacing, or not replacing, but supplementing a single historic residence with a potentially 39-unit development on Congress Street would not, based on bulk massing and required parking, would disrupt the area's character and undermine the intent of the POCD on that. It threatens historic and scenic resources, and you've heard about that. That's a goal and objective of the POCD, and it would irreversibly and irrevocably damage the parkway scenic quality, contrary to the POCD's preservation goals. It conflicts with environmental protection policies, as you've heard, in that it would not it cannot retain and manage stormwater on site, and would involve clearing of mature trees, 11-fold increase in impervious surface, alter natural hydrology, and would affect wetlands and water courses. That's inconsistent with the long-term commitment to environmental conservation in the POCD. And finally, the POCD highlights the importance of maintaining the function and safety of residential roadways, particularly in rural areas not designed for this volume. Congress Street is a 2-lane road. It does have hilly topography and limited sight lines. Again, I think it's completely inconsistent. This proposed development is inconsistent with the POCD. 8-2, just to go full circle, requires that consistency. I think that this is a misuse of 8-30G by just proposing the text amendment. And I think this hearing tonight has illustrated those challenges, where we're speaking about sort of this challenge of adopting a regulation in the vacuum. Mr. Parker touched on the Hamlet in Westport, which I have spent too much time on until 11:30 last night, listening to a commission that was bewildered at times over the past several months at what they understood a text amendment that they passed 2 years to be, and what they are now seeing. And it's been, and every one of them, even the commissioners that ultimately will support this will say that it was a bad plan to sort of not have sort of a simultaneous application. But once again, that was the applicant's choice. I have for the commission, and I have not had an opportunity to review all of this, but I have a protest petition that we would like to submit under 8-3B, which I'll submit.
So it's funny, I was thinking about that as you were earlier. You believe that that triggers supermajority you normally see under a zone change map? In this context?
We may be breaking a lot of new ground here, Mr.
I know, well, it's funny, because I was thinking about that as somebody was talking about it, and I just assumed you didn't have it because you didn't bring it up earlier, but.
As you can see, even a moment ago, I'm still getting petitions, but our position is yes, it does.
Okay,
impact upon,
I guess your position.
for the record, until we're, I'll just.
Well, I just, yeah, okay.
traffic impact, and once again, this is a public hearing. The applicant presented its application. I listened, I thought, I was shocked at how brief the presentation was on traffic and how, in my view, incomplete. I did speak with and consulted James Bubaris, who had appeared before this commission previously, and he had looked at the application briefly and pointed out to me that the traffic study is grossly incomplete, and most significantly, it fails to analyze sightlines to and from the site drive. I didn't see any sightline diagrams, sightline analysis, or measurement of actual travel speeds in the vicinity of the driveway, which once again is something that should have been included with the application when it was submitted. If it's in there and I'm wrong, then I'm sure Attorney Bellis can point it out, but certainly at this stage of the game, it's not part of the application. And I've got to say, and this kind of gets, I'm a bit surprised because every single person in this room who lives on Congress Street will talk to you about what happens when, on those mornings, when the Merritt Parkway is backed up, which is unfortunately all too frequent lately. And Congress Street is the relief valve. And even in front of these properties, and
My driveway looks.
Mr. Redmond can testify, or I'm sure he'll address the commission on that. But the cars back up far past this property, unfortunately, on a routine basis. So, and so just to wrap up, the proposed regulation and redevelopment that could ensue are incompatible with the surrounding neighborhood, the natural environment, the historic character of the Merritt Parkway. The application undermines the integrity of Fairfield zoning framework, ignores key statutory requirements under 8-2, 8-3, and based upon the public health and safety concerns, environmental concerns, as other matters that this commission may consider in the context of an 8-30G application. And it's all in there. And every witness testifying either 100% or a high likelihood of the harm that each one of them described. We have basically provided and this commission with the tools that this commission needs. That is, we all talk about, a lot of time is spent talking about substantial evidence. And that is what we tried to do this evening, provide you with tools that this commission needs to make a decision on this text amendment. But once again, all of the evidence is that there will be irreparable and irreversible harm to a nationally protected historic site, a significant environmental degradation, safety risks, and procedural deficiencies. And for that reason, we urge the commission to reject the application. I want to thank you for your generous patience. And I don't know if you have any questions for me.
No, I think we should turn to the public now, if that's okay.
And on behalf of the Greenfield Hill Village Improvement Society, the Merritt Parkway Conservancy, we thank the commission for all of your time and all the hard work you do here every week now, and more.
Thank you.
So, thanks.
So let me see, members of the public, can I just get a show of hands, members of the public that wish to be heard on this? Got 4 here. Do we have people signed up in queue? Okay, that's fine. If you can just come up one at a time, we'll just do first come, first serve. A lot's been said. If we can keep comments to 3 minutes, please, I'll keep a time clock here. Went a long time with Attorney Green and his experts. Obviously, you, members of the public, need to be heard as well, but I just be mindful of what the time is, and came up pretty extensive discussion. So if you can keep it to 3 minutes, please.
Before I start, I'd like to apologize to the committee. I'm just not in the best way.
No, you've been fine. No worries, sir.
I had a whole list of stuff that I wanted to read, and I'm sure it'll make you happy that I'm not going to, but,
Feel free to submit it to the record too, if you'd like.
and we probably have, I'm just a simple man. And you spoke about the house from 1854. It's been like it is for 170 years, and I worked 34 years of my life on an ambulance, and when I'm done, I will have nothing because EMS doesn't get any pension or anything like that. We don't even get recognition. People don't even realize that I'm out there. The reason that I'm saying that is this house is all that we have. And I just think that the value of this house is gonna be cut so badly that we won't be able to have anything. I grew up there, like I said, and just everything that you've heard tonight, just can't, try and be a little human nature here that this behemoth is gonna do to this area and my house. And I think that nobody in their right mind would have a positive vote on this. I don't want to insult anybody, and I don't want to sound like a wise guy, and I don't want to make anybody mad, but I don't think anybody would have a positive vote for this if this was going next to their house. That's.
Thank you. Thank you for your work as an, and like I said, if you wanted to submit that to the record, you can have this. Want to make that part of the record, feel free to. Yeah, well, we read everything that's submitted to us by writing.
She says you already have it.
Oh, we already have it. Oh, my mistake then.
I'll give it to you anyway, just to make sure.
Sure, that'd be great. And thank you for your work as an EMT.
Hi, so, my name's Mary Toth. I'm Rob's wife, and, I just wanna, I mean, he's more emotional than I am, but I am also about this, but our backyard and this property is adjoining. It's always been adjoining. There's never been a fence put between us. There's never been anything. It's beautiful. One big lawn, trees, deer, squirrels, chipmunks. I mean, anything you can think of, rabbits, I mean, wildlife and birds chirping, and it's gorgeous. I work 2 jobs. I come home, I can sit in that backyard and it's peaceful. It's so beautiful. And this building, we feel, is gonna take this all away from us. And we feel it's not right. I mean, it's gonna take our comfort, it's gonna take our peace, it's gonna take the charm of our yard. Anybody who comes into our yard says this is just gorgeous. You can't hear anything. You can't hear the parkway, you can't hear Congress Street. It's beautiful. Okay, all we have is our neighbors and everybody's always gotten along. It's 2 single-family homes. And you can walk, it's their property and our property is a couple steps apart. Okay, you just take a couple steps out of our backyard and you're in their property, and same vice versa. So building this building is gonna be like, every time we look out the window, we're gonna have to see a huge building. We're gonna have to see all these cars driving, all these people all around. I mean, this is taking from person A and giving to person B, and I don't think that's fair. I mean, I understand, you need more housing. I understand the affordable housing, but this is not the right location. It really isn't. I mean, it's not fair to us. This is like building literally in our backyard and literally on top of our house. Okay, that's how close it is. But on the other hand, if you do approve it, I mean, how are they gonna separate the properties? Okay, you're gonna build this big apartment building that all these people are gonna live in. Now, are they gonna walk over to our yard? We can't afford to put up a fence. Are we gonna be responsible to put up a fence so that these people don't come walking into our backyard? Is that fair? I mean, that's not fair. You don't know who's gonna rent these houses. You don't know what kind of people are gonna rent the houses. You don't know if they're gonna have a bunch of kids. So what are we gonna have, an open yard? Yeah, come on, everybody, come on, play in our yard. I mean, because that's what they're gonna do. They take 2 steps and they're right in our yard. And then again, what about the construction? The dust, the noise, the commotion? I mean, they're right on top of us. They're like an earshot away. How long does this take to build a building like this? It's gonna take a while. So we have to sit here in our comfortable home that we've owned. His family built actually in 1962. And I mean, I've been with him for 25 years, but he's been there all his life. Now we have to listen to this. I don't think it's fair. I really don't. I mean, I don't care about the affordable housing and you need more rental properties, that's great, but this is just not the location. I mean, it's just too close to us, and I don't think it's fair. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is James Arthurs. I live at 1440 Congress Street, directly opposite this building. I can't for the life of me understand why anybody would want to build affordable housing or senior citizen housing 2 miles from the nearest shopping areas, schools, bus stop. I heard somebody say there's a bus stop within half a mile, but to me, it's 2 miles away down the road. In an area with absolutely no pedestrian sidewalks management whatsoever. It's a dangerous crossing. I know it because I've walked regularly home from the Hi-Ho Motel to my house when I've had to leave my car there for certain reasons. But it's a dangerous crossing. It's a dangerous area to be walking as a pedestrian. I can't for the life of me understand how senior citizens or people maybe without cars, if they're in affordable housing, in a location like that. In addition to that, I wonder why this project isn't called the Congress Street Swamp, because that's the name you put on it on the corner. It used to be the wetlands, but now it's the swamp. And that swamp area gets flooded. The last time I remember a big one was probably in the mid-80s, but it came up at least 3 or 4 feet up the house opposite there. That whole intersection was a pond. So somebody saying that, you know, this area doesn't get affected. We've had our 100-year one. We had it 40 years ago. And it regularly fills up. It doesn't, never to that extent. I haven't seen it like that again, but then I've been away a lot. But it is an area that gets affected in heavy downpours. I know it because it runs down my drive. I've got 6 easements along my drive to run off into the property next to me, but it still runs down the bottom, and I see Congress Street, the water flooding down, you know, in a heavy rain, and floods down into that area. So the story is about this not being affected or being able to, if you raise the elevation, sorry, I jumped there, but it's not going to be affected. If you raise the elevation, as I've heard, that's going to make the whole situation worse. And it's going to be a concrete Nashville jungle, that whole area. Gentleman was talking about impervious. It's going to ruin it, make it so much worse. I do know the pond. When I first moved in there 40 odd years ago, people used to skate on it. I didn't see people swimming on it, but I did see people skating on it. And the family that lived there, it is grown over now. But if you walk down to the edge, if anybody's been there, and I'm sure, I know from the lawyers, some of the attorneys have been speaking here, they haven't even seen it, you know, from their comments, and they've even admitted it. But if you go and look there, it drops off immediately from the post that's there with the ribbon on it at the moment, the property line. It drops off immediately, goes down about 10 feet, and that comes back up towards the house. So I think the topography in that area, as has been described by experts much better than me, that doesn't lend itself to this. So there we go. Traffic, pedestrians, people living in that area with affordable housing just doesn't seem to ring right to me. And that's good. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Ben.
Good evening, everyone. How are you? My name is Dawn Dezurek, and I live at 21 Hoydens Hill Road. I've lived there over 35 years. I moved into the house as a tenant. 5 years later, bought the property along with my late husband. The property is of historical significance. Most importantly, the house that I live in, it's elevated to a degree. I have Cricker Brook runs through my 6-acre property, the bulk of which is in wetlands. And as the gentleman who testified before me, I have, in the past 30 years, we've had more than one flood. So when you get off of exit 44, there's a little, what I call the carriage house or cottage. And it is at the lowest elevation, just behind the hi-ho, just before the intersection where you take a right onto 58 or left, up Blackbird Turnpike. And about 3 times since it's flooded, it flooded to the extent that the cottage was flooded about 4 feet in my basement. The house would obviously not be there if it were built today because of it, everything, setbacks, too close to the road, too close to the water and everything, but it's there now. It's grandfathered in or whatever. My big concern, aside from the obvious, in my opinion, I kind of agree with the gentleman before me, not to be rude, but when I first saw that house, that beautiful little historical house, the thought of demolishing it and putting up, even honestly, a multifamily house seems out of character, let alone 20 units, 36 units, whatever have you. It just doesn't ring true to the neighborhood. As it is, we've got the monstrosity that the guy up the street wants to build at 96 units, which I think is approved or whatever. That blows my mind. Now they want to put something up behind the Hartford Healthcare. That's another thing. That would be right alongside the highway, the parkway. Then Hi-Ho wants to expand their parking lot. And I'll tell you one thing, I've been there for a long time and I don't intend to go anywhere. I will appeal everything I can afford to appeal, especially when it comes to putting out of character monstrosity buildings in places they don't belong. I just helped my veteran cousin get into affordable housing. It took me a long time. I'm very, very sympathetic to affordable housing. Absolutely has a place. This is absolutely not just not the place, it's the worst place. You're right alongside the parkway, you're right alongside the Congress Street, you're near a flood way, a flood zone, floodway. And I know this because it gets flooded to the point where I have gone to investigate my property and I've been walking in water up to here. Now, if you're gonna build 100-foot building by 150 feet, you're gonna have impervious building. Where is that water gonna go? And you can do and as Mr. Trinkus said, they don't even have soil samples. You don't know what galleries you can put under there. But beside that, it's just not the place for this. That's all I wanna say. And I hope the flooding that I've experienced isn't going to be worse, because now I'm more worried than I was when I got here about the extent of the flooding. So I hope that I know you have to follow the laws and the regulations and all of that, but take into account safety, flooding, traffic. There are no sidewalks. There has to be other places in the state of Connecticut that affordable housing, 830G places can go than next to a reservoir, next to a parkway in a AAA zone. One of the reasons we bought where we did was because we liked the idea of having a nice 2-acre buffer. Come on, it's just nuts. I couldn't believe when I saw what I saw about this beautiful little house. They want to put up 36 units. The guy is nuts, in my opinion. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other member of the public here wish to be heard? Seeing anybody sign up anybody joining remotely or by phone wish to be heard? Please, if you're joining remotely, at least, raise your hand electronically or sign in the chat. Or if you're joining by phone, please press *6. Right?
No.
No, okay, so they really need to be joining remotely now by computer, not by phone, okay.
Well, they have to indicate in the chat, otherwise they can't.
By like true landlines, they can't do, they do it on their cell phone, obviously. Yeah. Not seeing anybody raising their hand or joining by chat or joining the chat, okay. Final call, any member of the public in person or remotely wish to be heard? Not hearing anyone, I'll close the public comment portion. Attorney Ballas, your rebuttal?
Yes, I'll do it quickly.
Would you just come up here, please, yeah. Good evening.
I know it's been a long night for you guys. As it is every Tuesday with
Say
me.
long year so far, yeah.
I'm a volunteer too in my town. I'm on the library board, so not quite as contentious. Anyway, just a couple quick comments and then I'll get into the heart of it. I know the general public is well read on 830G is, I have because of all the cases we've had or you've seen so many applications, but in this particular case, a person living on this property would make approximately $93,600. I made 28,000 when I started as a lawyer. I don't consider that a poor person. They have the ability to buy a car. You wouldn't know the difference between them and the person living in the market rate unit that's next to them. So, saying that it's not an appropriate spot for somebody,
Sorry, just let him.
saying it's not an appropriate location, in my mind is just doesn't ring true to me. Joel made a couple of legal terms and, I'll just address it. He talked about spot zoning. Case law is crystal clear. Under 830G, there is no spot zoning, so, that's, it's not one up to date, in any of the court cases, through the appellate and Supreme Court. Following the plan of conservation and development, irrelevant. Case law is crystal clear. It's not an application that is made under regular zoning, where you do have to, when you change the zone, of course you have to file. You have to make the findings that it's consistent with the plan of conservation and development. This is made under 830G, guys. It's not 8-2. It's not 8-3. So the case law is clear, not relevant. Joel talks about 8-2, environmental concerns, 8-3. Sorry, in this particular case, none of those are the standards that you can look to, which you normally would under a zone change and a text amendment. This is specifically filed under 8-30G. I'll make that 100% clear. So saying it's a little different because I filed conceptual site plans. I would agree with you. You haven't seen a lot of those. I do it in other towns. They have seen it. But it's not novelty law. I'll give you three quick things. It's in your things. The statute itself talks about affordable housing applications seeking a zone change, include the submission of a conceptual site plan. And what does it have to describe? Four things. The total number of residential units, we've done that. Their arrangement on the property, we've shown that. The proposed developments, roads, there are no roads. And traffic circulation, there is none. Sewage disposal, we've supplied that, and water supply, we've supplied that. That's what we have to show you. I know you don't like it, but
We
that's
still
what.
have to judge whether there's a substantial harm to public health, welfare and safety. and all that
100%,
stuff.
absolutely,
And Attorney Green has,
absolutely.
at least, he'll assert, and we'll make that determination later, that he has provided sufficient information with respect to engineering. Well, let's start with the historic aspect.
Yep.
Which we've seen in the past, which I think would apply potentially to this text amendment because it deals with the max as built. Engineering and environmental, which are generally components to that as well.
Usually, yeah, I'll take each one.
No, please, because
Okay.
that's.
Yeah,
that's
so
gonna be the
let's-
heart-
And I would also say, Attorney Bellis, it doesn't matter whether we like or dislike any law, the law applies to us. So I think that narrative really isn't fair. This commission has a very good record. I'm not sure how often you've come to this commission, but we have a very good record of approving 830Gs and
Great.
affordable housing for that matter, just for the record.
I've been coming every week, so.
Commissioner Harrison, just let me
Okay, well,
acknowledge,
I've been here for 3 or 4 years, sir.
Commissioner Harrison, let me acknowledge you first before you jump in. But let me ask you this kind of point blank question that I asked kind of Attorney Green. I know I remember the statute. I appreciate the reminder about the conceptual designs aspect of it. But if you are giving, and I guess the point that when I asked him is the fight about engineering and environmental now or later?
It's later.
It's later. Okay.
I know it's coming, but it's
well-
not tonight.
Historical can certainly be now.
Yeah, I can address the historical if you, I don't mean to cut you off.
No, it's okay. I guess the other question I wanted to ask here up front is, we have the burden of proof on the appeal. Who has the burden of proof now?
All we have, you heard the four things that I had to introduce, right? Sewer, does it have sewer? At least the ability for capacity for sewer. Does it have the availability of water? Does it have, how many units are on the property? And, their arrangement, in this case, it's one building.
What's the exact subsection of that for me, please?
Yeah, sure. There's two sections. There's the statute, that is 8-30G. And then the statute is G in parentheses, B as in boy, and then C as in cat. And then there's the regulations that go along with the 830G statute. Those are the regulations. And that regulation is, it says under numbers.
Can you just get the
It's
citation?
not, yeah, it's under 7, but let me see the little subtitle. Hold on, please. 8-30G, yeah, subsection 7, the number 7, and it's only one sentence. They talk about be accompanied by a conceptual site plan. Any such regulation shall not require the submission of the type of plans, studies, calculations, or similar detailed information that will otherwise be required in connection with site development. Subdivision or re-subdivision, that doesn't apply. Plans which, when approved, will serve as the basis for the issuance of a building permit. So to
So
answer,
in your mind then, your burden of proof is the conceptual stuff that you're talking about now.
yes,
Substantial harm is a denial standard that's on us.
yes. And then when I come back, I have to give you more substantial evidence on the site plan.
So
So,
let's go, he has a
yeah, so
question.
Yeah, just
you
one
can ask your
question along
question.
those lines. I mean, would you agree that at such time as you do have a site plan, something like environmental or conservation concerns would have to be addressed at that time under the same 830G standard?
100%.
And that would be before us and not before this building officials who would be issuing a,
No, it'll be before you. So let me just make it even more clear. I would have to go to wetlands first before I came to you people, right? Then I bring my site plan in to you after I have a wetlands approval. So,
All right, so for
so
the.
that's why I'm saying a lot of it, I didn't interrupt Joel, but a lot of it's not,
But the conceptual stuff, then you hit that mark there. But the historic stuff, which
Yeah,
we'll talk
I'll hit
about,
the historic.
but that you need, I think you sounded like, at least you admit for the other one, that you admit is your burden of proof to initially show that there's no substantial harm to the historic aspect of the.
Yeah, I think, yeah,
Yes,
yes, I have to show you, I can show that.
no, that's fine, because I was curious about that
Yeah.
as we were talking.
So I mean, let's be frank, you guys know the case better than me, probably, 131 Beach, right? So, there they talked about, it wasn't within the historic district itself, but perhaps the height of the building, overseeing the historic district had an adverse impact, let's call it that. And then the court in 131 Beach Road said, no. First of all, we don't think that, fact that, it's outside, since it's outside the historic district, it doesn't have to do with the historical preservation, right? Because it's outside of it. And the second thing is the height, did not protect an interest that clearly outweighed the need for affordable housing. Those aren't my words. That's what the court said. So I'm looking at that case and saying to you, this is the same scenario. We're not, in this particular case, doing anything within the corridor of the historic preservation of the Merritt Parkway. No one's touching a bridge. No one's touching a tree. No one's planting wildflowers or doing all the things that they do
Where do
within
you
this.
define the corridor of the Merritt Parkway?
I asked that of the expert.
I get that, but what is you, the applicant?
Yeah, the right of way.
So, I mean, obviously, a building's not gonna be built on the road itself.
No.
Or this, and the thing, it's gonna be built off of the roadway, whether it's 2
They're
feet.
taking that, they're trying to impose that historic, quote, historic, preservation on your commission by saying it's okay. That, even though it's not in the historic district, it's because it's outside, it kind of impacts it. But that's not the law. and that's not what historic preservation is all about. The historic preservation is within the corridor. That's what it's all about.
You define the corridor as literally the road and the,
No, and the shoulders, the right of way.
yeah, but I understand. The right of way though is the concrete and the bridges.
Yeah.
So
And no, I would say the shoulder too. I'm not,
guardrail, so anything past the guardrail is outside of the corridor.
no, the right, I asked him what the right of way, I asked one gentleman what the right of way was, and he talked about the shoulder. I can go look at my notes. I think he said 25 feet, then the road's about 32 feet, but it depends on the median.
Well, I think there was testimony though about, I mean, maybe, I think a mile or two was said, but I think that might be a little bit, but I mean, that there is a visual impact. The whole point of this is be a parkway, not a park as in you park a vehicle, but a park as in you go to a park. This is supposed to have a visual aspect of being a park and then being a road itself. So it's I mean, I think I think they cited enough evidence of the intent of that to be not just a corridor, but a little beyond that.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing, a little beyond that.
Well, the
It's
problem with
stretching it.
Yeah, but Beach Road was different in that we had designed, I mean, there was, lines drawn on the map as to where the historic aspect of it was. Now, we had, I don't need to get into it. I mean, I respectfully disagreed with it in a lot of ways because I voted again, we voted in a way that it was appealed and, overruled. But you would think though that this parkway, the historic aspect is somewhere beyond the guardrails.
I don't agree. No, I didn't say guardrail, beyond the right of way.
Where is the right of way then?
The right of way, like it would be similar to a road right of way, right? Right of ways are usually, I'm making it up, 50 feet. The pavement may only be.
Okay, that's what I wanted to
24
hear.
feet.
That's what I wanted to hear from you, is that it's not just the guardrails you're talking.
No, I'm not talking about the guardrails. I said the right of way.
The right of way in your
Is.
mind is,
Not in my mind, he testified to it,
well, okay.
25 feet beyond the pavement.
Mr. Chair, can I just, we are up against a deadline for the application following this one.
Yeah, so let's,
So I just wanted to ask if I could ask the commission's indulgence to go slightly beyond the curfew.
I had intended to do that.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
almost done. I won't hold
Let's,
you guys
I'm
up.
sorry, I'm partaking in this problem though, delay too.
One question.
One more, then we can.
Yeah, just have one question. And
Thank you for that.
Okay.
I'm fine with going past that.
Yeah, in terms of the right of way, I mean, for instance, a street, often there's 10 feet of right of way, which is on which would appear to be on private property.
Looks that way.
To your knowledge, does any 20-foot right of way of the Merritt Parkway, is it over the subject property?
No, it's not. If you look at the conceptual site plan. In my approach?
Of course. Well, yeah.
Oh, I'm asking here.
It's okay, come on. Is that already in the record?
Yeah.
That's fine.
This
Just
is a
wanted-
conceptual site plan. So see, it says Merritt Parkway? And then this is the property over.
And that's more than 20 feet.
So it's 300, the house is 360 feet. From the house, now that's different because it's set back 360 feet.
What would the
To,
setback, what would the proposed setback be?
I'm sorry, so
In the text amendment, where would the proposed setback be compared to the road?
oh, compared to the road, I had put in the standard 50-foot setback from the property line. I can't answer
Which is
that.
what our
Yeah,
regulations, okay, thank you.
I didn't, I
That's okay.
I'm not sure I can scale it.
No, don't worry about it.
It's more than that, obviously. So their argument is, in my opinion, not valid. They're saying you can't build anything, even outside the corridor, that they don't like. That they find that it would be, against the pleasant driving of this parkway. And I say that's a stretch too far. Because that's not what's there now. And that is not what the intent of the historic preservation was all about. If they submitted, Joel put into the record, you'll see the National Historic Preservation aspects, and it's in the corridor. It's the bridges, it's the landscaping, it's the stuff in the corridor. It's nothing about beyond it. So my argument is that we are not doing anything to that corridor, obviously. And that what's beyond it is not, in my opinion, is not something that you can say is a legitimate public interest And then secondly, I don't think it outweighs the need for affordable housing. So I have that's my answer to your question on that one. My second point would be that there are ways to do mitigation, and I think one of the gentlemen that Joel brought up suggested it, and I talked to my client and he had no problem with it. Screening, make them spend money and put up big trees. I'm not talking about little 2-footers, right? Big evergreen trees. The species I'm not familiar with, but someone used arborvitaes, but it could be another species that blocks pine trees, whatever it may be. And all along the back of the person's property at 1477, and they grow big. I have pine trees in my yards. I think I've been there 20 years. They're well over 60 feet tall, and we used them as screening. And I don't see my neighbor. When you're going on the Merritt Parkway, if you saw these big trees, I think that would help mitigate or be a reasonable change. And it might even be on our final site plan. So again, the argument's a little early. But to answer your question about the text amendment, I think you should approve the text amendment. I'll have my ability to go to wetlands. I'll have engineers design drainage systems, and we can have those talks and fights at the appropriate time. I don't see how you could possibly look at conceptual site plans and say that there's absolutely no way you can build a project on it and have that be credible evidence. It's just simply not credible. And you'll know this from experience, a lot of the text amendments you see, you don't even get a conceptual site plan. They'll just come in with no, not an 830G, right? They'll just come in with a zone change and a text amendment, say we want senior housing, blah, 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 blah. You don't get site plans. And
I mean, practically we do.
yeah, you might, but you don't have, it's not
I've been
required.
pushing to make sure site plans come with them for this exact reason.
Yeah, I understand your concern, but I can only go by what the statute says now. And I will be back if he pursues this, so that fight will be for another day.
Final questions? Just quickly, I mean, we have a moratorium in place for the 830G. If this commission approves the regulation amendments, do you believe that when you come back with I assume the site plan would be an 830G, right? Would that moratorium apply to that?
No, because the text amendment then would become the law. It would be a regulation in your book and come in that way.
All right, fair enough. Thank you.
All right, thank you all. I hope I made it quick.
Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I will end the public hearing on these matters. 72nd Congress Street. Thank you for the conversation. Attorney Fallon, I'm sorry, 4180 Black Rock Turnpike Zone Change Application 4180 Black Rock Turnpike LLC to establish a design commercial district on land presently zoned residential AAA zone. And 4180 Black Rock Turnpike Site Plan Review Application of 4180 Black Rock Turnpike LLC to allow for a parking lot expansion for an existing hotel and restaurant use in the AAA zone.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I apologize.
I'm usually going to bed about this time. I'm gonna rally now. Here we go. For the record, my name is John Fallon. With me is Brian Carey, who is our environmental consultant on this project you'll be hearing about momentarily. I appreciate you guys and ladies taking the time to, work us in here. Again, everybody's saying it, but there's gonna be a plaque somewhere someday to this commission for the dedication you've shown over the last year and a half. Amazing. Okay. 4180 Black Rock Turnpike. This is an application to amend the zoning map and a special permit to approve in order to increase the available parking on site at 4180 Black Rock Turnpike. You are familiar with the site. It's the site of the Hi-Ho Motel. In addition, the very popular Barcelona restaurant has been located on the property for many years. There's also a small retail area occupied by a liquor store. The property itself comprises 88,048 square feet, 2.021 acres. As shown on the zone change map we submitted herewith, we're requesting an amendment of the zoning map in order to rezone a portion of that subject property, which is currently zoned residence AAA, to design commercial. I'll explain why we would like you to do that in a moment. The portion of the property that is subject to the zone change contains 22,979 square feet, just over a half an acre. As proposed, the zone change request, as you can see with the map that we provided, continues to provide a significant buffer to remain zone AAA, abutting the residence AAA district to the west of the property boundary. So we're not asking you to change the zone up to the boundary line of the AAA zone of our neighbor. We're leaving a substantial buffer in place. Why do we ask you to do this? It's important, and it involves the fact that we need additional parking on this site as a matter of not just customer convenience, but as I'll elaborate on in a minute, safety. To provide that much additional parking, what we're doing here is, if you look at the plans that have been submitted, and it can be a little confusing, but here are the numbers. Right now, there are 95 parking spaces on site. The rezoning of the parcel that we request and the special permit approval for the additional spaces will increase the on-site parking to 133. So we go from 95 to 133. That's a net increase of 38 spaces. These additional spaces on site as proposed will have a very significant benefit in benefiting the interests of public safety, since on-street parking, as you know, is really unavailable on Black Rock Turnpike, and it's dangerous if anybody were to try it. For many years, this site and the restaurant in particular benefited from the fact that the nursery across the street was vacant. And although that wasn't a perfect situation, because you had people parking over there and then late at night crossing Black Rock Turnpike, sometimes after having an evening of a few cocktails, etc. So that was not a good thing to begin with, but it's not open to us now. And indeed, we did early on inquire with regard to the new healthcare facility, whether or not we could work something out, evening parking. Well, we can't. And I don't say that in any critical way of them. If I were representing them, I would not want them to do that either. It would not be good from a liability standpoint for either party. So we do very much need these additional spaces. They will help us significantly deal with the overflow issues that we have now. If you go up there late in the evening, or tonight's a Tuesday, I don't know, you'll actually see people parked along the side. We really want to address that. And we're comfortable that we can address that because there'll be no adverse impact here associated with the zone change and the work we propose to do, because we are maintaining the residential buffer. The new parking area is not directly proximate to any residences. We did go and received on December 4, 2024, and Brian will elaborate briefly in a minute. We went to the Conservation Commission after public hearing, and we did receive unanimous approval of an inland wetlands permit. That's part of your record, number 240079. The approval from the Wetlands Agency and the detailed review by the staff and the town engineering department all recognize that the proposal will result in very significant improvement to stormwater quality and detention. So that's another thing I want to say. You've heard a lot in the prior application. Not only are we going to benefit public safety here in terms of the matters that I related to in terms of have additional on-site parking, but we're really having a very significant benefit in terms of stormwater detention and water quality, because that whole parking lot and the now unimproved area has no water quality or stormwater detention at all. And as Brian will elaborate in a minute, we're now bringing the whole parking lot up to a state-of-the-art opportunity for both water detention and water quality, and that was why we got the unanimous approval. So I would just like Brian to give you a brief overview of the site plan that is part of the special permit application, and then I'll have a few closing remarks. Brian.
Do you mind actually bringing up the site plan? I have a thumb drive if you.
I have do you just want the site plan?
Yeah, you can see one, so we'll just go through quick. I will say we submitted our inland wetland permit application actually it was almost a year ago today. It was on July 11th was our first hearing. We had several nights of hearings. I would like to say there wasn't really much public input during the hearings, but we did have a lot of input from both the Conservation Commission staff. So what you see in front of you is the most feasible and prudent alternative as determined by the Conservation Commission after we had several reiterations. This is the best plan, we believe, for the site to address the issues that we are trying to correct based on the lack of parking for the facility. As Mr. Fallon, Attorney Fallon said, the existing restaurant does ebb and flow with parking, and they are short on parking. As you can see with you can see the gray area is where the parking is going to be expanded into. We are constructing a retaining wall along that area to mitigate the amount of grading that's required. None of the work is being completed within the FEMA significant flood hazard area of Cricker Brook. And we've really minimized the amount of disturbance within the 100-foot upland review area to the greatest extent possible based on the plans that being shown. We did receive, after several back and forth with the town engineer, a positive recommendation from them. Stormwater management plan has been submitted to you for your review, along with the information provided by the town engineer. One of the things we did, if you go to L1 onto the sheet, as part of our mitigation effort, we did provide a robust planting plan in the riparian area to mitigate any proposed disturbance. So we're actually adding back more plants than we're removing. You can see the stormwater detention system is an underground detention system that will collect the stormwater for the 25 years storm as required by the town engineers, the town's drainage standards. It also meets the requirements of the Connecticut DEP Stormwater Quality Manual. Flooding considerations, as we said, the project as designed will not increase the flood heights in the AE zone associated with Cricker Brook. And that being said, most of the impacts have been mitigated through the use of the planting plan. Temporary impacts will be mitigated through installation of erosion sediment controls and catch basin outlet protection, temporary sediment traps. We have a robust ENS plan that follows the Connecticut guidelines. This is a self-verification plan, meaning that it's not over 5 acres. So the town's your regulations come into effect for the erosion and sediment control plan. There will be site monitoring that is required on a weekly basis, and after storms of 1 inch of rain, that will be required to be submitted to the Inland Wetland Commission conservation staff. If you look at the inland wetland permit, there are very extensive specific conditions that are protective of the adjacent watercourse. That being said, this has received a lot of review from the Inland Wetland Commission. And again, we're just adding a minimal amount of parking that is required to meet the requirements of the restaurant and hotel.
Thank you, Mike. In closing, I think what I'd like to say, and I know a speaker from a prior application is here. I live less than a mile from here. And so I listened with a lot of interest in the recent applications that you've heard, including the one tonight involving the properties on Congress Street and Upper Black Rock Turnpike. And without taking any positions on those, I respect the concerns and considerations of members of the public, my neighbors, with regard to proposals of that kind. You did receive over the course of the last few months a number of letters, and they referenced a lot of properties, and they basically focused on the Black Rock Turnpike, the Upper Black Rock Turnpike project, which you heard, and the Congress Street project, which you heard tonight. To the extent that we were referenced in a couple of those letters, the two things I want to point out are the concerns when you read the emails that you've received with regard to these Congress Street and Black Rock Turnpike projects. And some of which you heard tonight with regard to the Congress Street project basically involve two things, among others: traffic and traffic safety and environmental considerations. we would say to you and we would say to the members of the public, measuring this application by those standards, we're not the bad guys. Because this application at significant cost to the property owner is driven purely by improving a safety situation based upon a successful restaurant where we just from time to time don't have enough parking, which leads to very scary situations. So safety is a preeminent driver of this application. The other driver of this application, as we got into it, was environmental, because we realized we were dealing with a site in a sensitive area, which you heard a lot about in a prior application, that had no stormwater management, no stormwater quality at all provisions, because it was built before we thought of such things. Now it'll be state of the art. So this is driven by our need to improve our site plan for safety purposes. And the benefit will be environmentally very significant in terms of this important site. And we do all that and still maintain a significant residence AAA buffer. And that half acre or so that we asked you to change the zone on will allow us to address both those issues. So we thank you for hearing us at the end of what's been a long and very interesting evening, I might say, as a resident. So I'll let it go at that. And
Commissioner Harrison, a question?
Commissioner,
Yes, thank you. Hey, good evening, Commissioner, sorry, Attorney Fallon, can you hear me?
that's gonna be my next life, but yes.
No, probably, hopefully
I
not.
don't think I get elected, but that's okay.
Just a quick question, and I'm a big patron of Barcelona. I'm glad I've never had any of the parking issues that you talk about. So what would be the increase of the impervious surface with the additions?
Mr. Carey.
Yeah, so the total increase of the project, site disturbance related to project as designed is 13,200 square feet of site disturbance, but the amount of roughly impervious area is 10,200 square feet, all of which is being mitigated through the stormwater system to account for the 2, the 10, and the 25-year storm events as required by the town engineering standards, but also by the Town Inlet Wetland Commission regulations as well. If you look at the plans, there's significant BMPs that have been added into the plans to address any of the short-term and to really eliminate any long-term impacts to the associated Cricket Brook resource.
Okay, thank you. And I know this is not the application before us tonight, but are there other plans to expand the Hi-Ho and the Barcelona? I mean, we always hear a lot of rumors on the street that there are other plans happening at this area, so I was just curious.
No, ma'am. Not that I or I think my client are aware of it, so no.
Okay, all right, very good. All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Any other questions?
Can I ask a question?
You'll be up next, don't worry.
So, question.
I will add one other thing that came up a lot during the public hearing during inland wetlands. There was a safety issue with the dumpster. We have actually moved the dumpster because there was a problem with the truck trying to get down the hill. If you've ever been in the back there, it's actually pretty steep. So that has been moved in coordination with the restaurant and the hotel to an area that's flat and accessible. So that really eliminated a lot of if you went back there was a lot of garbage, and so that will also be mitigated.
Commissioner Ford?
How many parking spots will be added?
38. Right now there's 95. With the expansion, we'll have 133, so 38.
So just kind of reverse engineering, kind of pick up on Commissioner Harrison's comment. If you had the additional 38 spots, would that promote maybe an addition to the hotel or something like that as a right or anything like that?
No, because
it's like a Trojan horse. So
no, it isn't. I mean, the problem, the reason it isn't is because of the constraints that the site imposes relative to topography.
Right.
If you get there, and wetlands, we're very much boxed in. I mean, frankly, if we could have added more parking to address the need for additional parking, we would have. But we can't, because if we have to maintain a certain integrity of the AAA buffer, if we have to be cognizant of the wetlands regulations and proximity. And if we have to be cognizant of the site topography, I mean, what you see is what you get here. And there's no, even, there's no physical location, if you're familiar with the site, I mean, the restaurant's where it is, the topography, so no. It's legitimately to address the need for additional parking for our current uses.
With the current uses,
Mhm.
what is the parking minimum? Just,
Gee, that's a good.
I don't have that off the top of my head.
I
we
don't-
certainly, well, I mean, I guess my question, before, now, currently, are we less parked than we should have otherwise been?
We've certainly increased it. I think the parking, I have somewhere in this file on that information, and I can give it to staff.
Let's go, either give it to staff or why don't you look?
I do know this, and then that we are, we're bringing the parking up to current standards more than it is now because the parking by and
We have
large
less
was.
parking than we would otherwise should
Yeah,
have.
right now, that's correct. Under current regulatory standards.
And with the additional parking will be still kind of less, but obviously closer, but less than what the current.
I think so, but rather than speculate, I'd rather get you that information.
That's fine.
Through staff for your work session.
That's fine. We'll do that.
Because I did look at that at one point.
I mean, the hi-ho is non-conforming.
Correct.
Yeah, I'm not saying there's a
But
problem.
we're making it better.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting that. I'm just trying to compare the two. That's all.
Our feasible and prudent alternative analysis, what was originally submitted to wetlands, actually had more parking. But through our discussions with them, we came back down.
Okay, I'll end the initial presentation of
Thank
this
you.
application.
Right.
Open it up to public comment. If you have a question, ma'am, now's the time to ask. The question
so
can
just
come
to-
through us to them.
Just a quick question,
Why don't
yes.
you come up? Yes.
Do you mind if I stay here, ma'am? Just.
No, sure.
Come on.
You can just come up and sit,
Here.
right at the edge here, this table here. Well, that's fine. If you can just give me your name and address again.
Yes. Dawn Zurich.
Hi, Dawn, how are you?
Oh, good. And I'm at 21 Hoydens Hill Road. I only have one disagreement with what you said.
Okay.
My property does actually abut the Hi-Ho property,
Mhm.
right in the back.
Okay.
So my only thing is, one of my favorite places on the planet is in my backyard. I have a little deck that I had to file for a variance and all that to get out there. So in that one spot, I can see,
Start surveying again, please. Thank you.
yeah, I can actually show you exactly where I am on that map. I was trying to figure it out. So my only, I think it's great that you're doing the parking, because I know there's a safety issue with that.
Mm-hmm.
My only concern with the Hi-Ho living there all these years and it's gotten bigger, and since Barcelona, that made it even bigger and more populated and all that. So, can I go up? Do you mind if I go up and point to where?
Sure.
Yeah.
Wherever you want, I don't care. It's fine.
So, yeah, so, there's Cricker Brook,
Mhm.
where you see where it says Cricker.
Yes.
Okay, then the line just above that,
Yeah,
beyond that line is my property.
right where the
Right where your
cursor-
arrow is,
where the
all of
cursor-
that.
where the arrow is. Yeah,
And-
okay.
And beyond
Yep,
there, because the brook runs through the property.
yeah,
So
yeah.
my only issue is with the area where the parking lot is.
The expansion, yeah.
No, the
Oh,
existing,
the
even
existing.
before the expansion.
Oh, okay.
What happens is customers tend to throw their trash over the embankment.
Right.
And it's been bad enough with that area of the parking lot, but now with the parking lot expanding, I'll be able to see that even more from where I am. Not only that, but now there's probably gonna be parking lights. So that's gonna be something I'll see. I don't know if there's any way I can propose or ask or request some sort of like a fence or something that would prevent people from throwing trash.
Let me ask you a question. Have you noted any improvement of that situation, say, over the last 6 months? And I'm not looking not to do something,
No,
but.
no, I can say, honestly, probably a little bit, yes.
Yeah.
And I have a feeling it has to maybe do with the fact that they've moved the dumpster.
It also has to do with the fact that the very point you're bringing up came up at the
Sorry,
wetlands.
Mr. Chairman, the point of order, who is speaking? The person or Attorney Fallon?
This is me, Commissioner Harrison.
Yeah, we've
And-
got a
and-
little informal, so. it's
Okay.
okay.
I just wanna, I just wanna give everybody the same right that Attorney Fallon is taking.
I don't think the the lady here has a problem with this back and forth. right
No,
now.
I just, the reason I asked it was because the issue came up at the wetlands hearing. And we have made a concerted effort as a result of those comments and having that brought to the attention of the owners to police the property more vigorously. And that's why the only reason I asked the question, I didn't ask it in an argumentative way. I literally wanted to know, have you noted? in
Yeah,
your
yeah,
group?
no, and I appreciate that and absolutely, I appreciate that.
By code, this wall right here has to have a fence on it too. So there will be.
Oh, that's amazing. And I'm so happy.
How would the fence?
So it has to be a retaining, it's a retaining wall higher than 3.5 feet, so there will be a 4-foot fence.
So you have a fence.
Enough to make an impingement for any trash or litter, which is.
Light pollution to her probably.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. Cause I love where I live. I feel so blessed to live where I live. I love Fairfield and I love my home and
We
it's,
think you're a good neighbor too.
It's-
So
well,
we
thank
wanna, we want you to be.
thank you. And I'm thrilled that you moved the dumpster because that means, you may not know this, but when the trucks have to back up, I hear that bump, bump at all hours of the morning. So that's very good.
So we will
Very
have a
happy.
fence on top of the retaining.
Wonderful. That
Great.
makes me so happy.
Anything
Okay,
else, ma'am?
No,
thank you.
thank you.
Any other member, well, certainly nobody here in person. Any member of the public joining remotely? And Kat?
No,
If any member of the public is joining remotely, please sign in the chat or raise your virtual hand to identify yourself.
I had a question, Tom. It's Peter,
Okay, to whom? To the,
Attorney Fallon.
so let me just see about the members first.
Sure.
Final call for members of the public. Hearing none, I'll close the public comment portion. Commissioner Collins, quickly, hopefully.
Mr. Fallon, are these the same owners that own the property at the Circle Hotel?
I don't know if they are the same owners, or not. I think there may be some overlapping, but it's a different entity for sure. This is 4180 Black Rock Turnpike LLC, and I don't believe that the members are the same.
They're not principals,
I don't believe all of them are, correct?
but the ones that are doing the Circle Hotel are principals on this one?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else?
No, sir.
Any other final questions? Hearing none, I'll close the hearing on this application.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
That being our last item, right, I will close the hearing.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
4 minutes over.